A man with long blonde hair turns to a girl and says that he is tired and disappointed in her. The girl is crying while sitting on the floor, and the man claims that she is not his daughter and has never meant anything to him. However, the child claims that he is her father, and she explains that she was mistaken. And she claims that it is all her fault and begs him not to leave. The girl is very worried and cries, asks the man not to leave her, and promises that she will be a good daughter. She again begs her to forgive her. But after a few minutes, she doesn't understand why she's asking for forgiveness. The girl looked at her hands and doesn't understand what it means because they were covered in red paint. The man tells her that she begged Ophelia to die in her place and asks her about it. He screaming orders her to answer the question since she begged him so much. But the girl objects and says that she simply wanted to become Ophelia. After all, she simply wanted to become his real daughter. The man with long hair screams and says that she has crossed the line. Hearing this, the girl does not understand why she says this and why her body moves on its own. The gentleman tells the girl to live as if she were dead. Otherwise, he doesn't think he can tolerate her any longer, and then leaves. The child looked at the room, and she didn't understand how she ended up there. And when she looked at her hands, she thought that this couldn't be, and it seemed to her that she had probably died. The main character remembers that one day her Pak Doya was adopted. And what's more, it was the owner of a conglomerate whose name everyone knows. Leaving the orphanage and getting into a luxurious foreign car, she couldn't help but tremble with joyful excitement. At this time, the girl beats her fists on the door and asks for help. She says that she was wrong and made a mistake. The main character ended up locked in, and she spent 120 days in pitch darkness, not seeing anything around her. Suddenly, the door is opened by a woman wearing a strange hat. She addresses the girl and tells her not to make a sound, as she will have to take on the bad luck of the youngest daughter of the family. Hearing this, the main character only then realized her fate, because she was unlucky to be born similar to Sulandipo's seriously ill daughter, who did not stay long, and therefore she was adopted to be used as a diversion for her illness. The lady remembers living like this for 10 years, trapped in darkness, tasting despair. The only people the lady could talk to were the shamans and scholars who visited her from time to time. She managed to get out of that horrible house only when she became an adult. More precisely, she was thrown out because she was no longer useful. Standing on the street with a small travel bag, the main character thought that finally she would be able to live like everyone else and be a person, not a tool. However, the girl understood everything when she got into an accident, because it happened in a matter of seconds. In the last moments of her life, the lady thought that this was how the Park family had long ago decided to finish her off, and they planned to do this by staging a car accident. The main character understands that if she dies like this, she will not be able to get to the afterlife because she will be overwhelmed with resentment, and she will wander through the heavens forever. The little girl remembers everything clearly up until the moment she stopped breathing. However, she does not understand what is happening, because 5 minutes ago she was an adult, and now she is little. The main character realizes that memories have begun to penetrate her mind, and so she finds herself in the body of Bunny, who was born in the slums called the Dump. Spryadosh recalls that she once attracted the attention of the great Duke Krendel, who is called a great hero here. It was her appearance which strongly reminded him of Ophelia Credel, his youngest daughter, and so he decided to adopt her. The Grand Duke abandoned his real daughter and adopted a false one so that she would take on Ophelia's deadly curse. In this world, curses do exist. They are cast by evil mages using forbidden techniques. And when the girl looked at her hand, she saw the sign of the curse that Bunny had received instead of Ophelia. And she thought about how no one had told her what it was. When the girl turns 18, the curse will work on that day. Everything will return to normal, and the real daughter will return to the family and the fake to the slums. At this time, the main character realized that she ended up in Bunny's body, and this is all because her life is so similar to hers. However, the girl does not understand what happened to the real Bunny until she fully knows what situation she found herself in. The main character is sure that she knows what to do, and at that time she thought that she does not want to be used and then thrown away as it happened in her past life. She understands that she needs to get out of here. The girl thinks that she must remove the curse before she reaches adulthood, before it affects her body completely. And at that time, the girl thought that she could because she had no other choice. Bunny realizes that the horrible Pak family did teach her something, and it was fortune-telling by physiognomy. That is, she knew how to determine a person's temperament and character by their appearance and used her knowledge wisely. The main character was in the western tower of the castle of the Grand Duke of Credel. And when she opened the window, she thought that she did not understand why she became possessed in this era. The western tower is where the guilty nobles are kept. Only now it is closed, and the girl is all alone here. She looked down and thought that if she decides to jump, there will be no trace of her left. The main character understands that if she had entered Bana's body before she decided to perform the magic ritual, everything would not have gone so far. Because of the curse, the Grand Duke Credel had to say goodbye to his beloved daughter. And this man caught Bane in an attempt to prepare a potion that changes fate. After all, the girl grew up in a dump, and she was ill-mannered and often stole and therefore earned universal contempt. Having thought about all this, the main thing is that she is in complete assy. The girl wondered if she was destined to be a loser locked in a tower until she grew up. The main character realizes that Bunny is now 10, and therefore she will have to stick around here for another 8 years. The girl understands that determination alone is not enough, and she would definitely do something if she could act and meet other people. And she understands that at this rate, it is better for her to immediately return to the dump. Bunny muses that even though the slums are lawless, at least she's free there, and she'll demand that they remove her death seal and leave the castle immediately. Suddenly, a man opens the door and screaming asks the girl if she stole it, and then grabs her by the breast. The girl looked at him. He had a wide, shiny, and clear forehead, and this meant that he was born into a rich family. His eyebrow was cut off, as if it had been scratched by the claws of a wild animal, and most likely he was separated from his brothers and sisters in childhood. The girl looked at the man and saw a clear jawline and precise facial features, and this meant that he was brave, but he thought in a limited way and lacked flexibility because he never backed down from his decisions. There was so much energy in his piercing gaze that it seemed as if his eyes were glowing. The nose is high and round. The teeth are even, but the fangs are surprisingly sharp. The hair resembles a lion's mane. And despite his young age, the guy has well-developed muscles, is hardy and strong. The lady understands that he is inclined to trust his instincts and immediately throw into battle, but she has a well-developed intuition. His brutal habits can ruin him, but in general and on the whole, the main character thought that if he becomes a military man, he will be able to rule the world. And she knows who this man is, and he is the second son of the Credel Silver family. Bunny looked at him and remembered how he behaved in the past, and how he threatened her. The girl looks at the guy in surprise and asks what she stole. Silver says that she suddenly learned to act innocent and asks her about it. The guy asks who else, but her would dare to touch Ophelia's brooch. Hearing this, the girl does not understand what he is talking about. The main character objects and says that she did not steal it, and at that time, she thought that if Bunny's memories were to be believed, then that was the case. Silver angrily asks if she has forgotten how he promised to beat her to death. And at that moment, the guy lets go of the girl, and she falls, and he says that he gives her exactly 1 day, and Bunny must return her in a good way during that time, before he puts a slave brand on her neck. Silver claims that he can do it without any trouble, and he says that this was the last warning. The main character remembered that and thought, even if this is not her memory, but the brooch that Silver always wears with you, she heard that Ophelia gave him this decoration before her departure. At this time, the girl realized that she really deserved suspicion. Because Bunny had thief skills, she even managed to sneak through the secret entrance in the Grand Duchy several times and steal a couple of things from Ophelia's room. And she did this at the age of 8. The main character remembers that she was caught stealing things and then locked in this room. Since this is how the brooch turns out, the only thing that Ophelia Katarubani can steal while imprisoned in the tower. Silver has been hanging around Bunny for a while now, acting like he's a warden on a criminal's trail. So it's easy to assume that the sly Bunny somehow stole the brooch right out of his hands. The main character reflects on the fact that the real criminal understands the dynamics of the relationship between Bunny and Silver very well. A young girl sitting in her room does not understand who is knocking at such a late hour, and at that moment, the maid opens the door and pushes food in. and the girl thought that if she looked at the newcomer, she would surely get a hint. Bunny runs up and knocks over the bowl of soup. Seeing this, the maid screams if she's crazy and asks her about it. Then she asks the maid Melissa if she's okay. The maid turns to the girl, screams that she is a crazy demoness, and reminds her that she already told her to behave as quietly as possible. Bunny looked at them and thought about how these were Ophelia's loyal maids, and they were the closest confidants of the Duke's real daughter. Aside from his inner circle, they were the only ones who knew Bunny was a fake, and they hadn't even taken a vow of silence. The great Duke of Credel did not send them away in case Ophelia returned here. And since this is truly the greatest love for a daughter, because of this, Bunny was subjected to all sorts of humiliation from all sides of the maids. The maid looks at the girl and asks if she has not yet realized what position she is in. The maids report that if it weren't for them, the girl would have swollen from hunger. Another maid says that they won't even get a word of gratitude from her and asks if she's going to complain about the food, because it's a much more refined dish than what she ate in her slums. Hearing this, the main character thought that this was soup cooked on wet rags, and they were talking about it with delight. Melinda tells her that Devushka Razlila soup she cooked it, and that's why she will have to go hungry today. This means that if she wants to go, then let her go and do what she does best, and that's begging. Bunny looked at the maid and thought that in physiognomy, the forehead is responsible for hostile luck, and her forehead is narrow and flat. The sides are sunken, the muscles are flabby, the eyes are like a rat's. The tip of the nose is red, and the beauty is unhealthy. The ears are thin, like paper shells, wide open, almost no lobes. The mouth is pointed. The lips are pulled back and pouty. And after that, the main character looked at Melinda and thought that this woman was poor and discontented. The maid doesn't understand why she's staring at her like that and asks about it, and then asks if she's asking for trouble. The maid Emma tells her to calm down, and Melinda asks if she even understands who she is protecting. The maid suggests that she might cause Bunny to run away. Melinda says that she cannot run away from the Grand Duke Credel and suggests that the maid not make her laugh. However, Emma claims that Bunny is Mistress Ophelia's only hope, and if something happens to the girl, the curse will affect their little mistress, who is already weak. However, Melinda claims that she is still too kind to her. Closing the door, the maid pushes the girl to the floor and tells her not to dare stick her head out of hears. Seeing this, Emma looked at the girl with disappointment and apologized for not being able to help her in any way. When Bunny is left alone in the room, she says that now she knows who the criminal is. Late at night, the little girl heard Silver and his maids enter her room. He looks at the girl and asks why she doesn't run away like some mongrel. At that moment, the main character thought that she was dying of hunger and couldn't even get up. Bunny reports that she has found the culprit. Hearing this, the young master says that she is not fooling around because he knows that she stole the necklace. The girl thought about how she had identified the criminal, and the master hadn't even given her a chance to explain. She thought about how the second prince had turned 12 this year. He was tall and strong, looked like a teenager, but in reality, he was still a child. And besides, the boy trusted his instincts too much. Bunny realizes that no matter how good he is, he still needs to gain experience to gain recognition. Silver shows the girl the brand and says that he gives her exactly 1 day, because of this time she must return it in a good way. Otherwise, he will put a slave brand on her neck. The young gentleman shows a piece of paper with a drawing on it and says that it is a magic scroll. When torn, a vine is carved on the target's neck, symbolizing slavery. Silver claims that with such a seal, she will never be able to disobey her master's orders. In addition, her subjugation magic has a tracking spell built into it, and he says that he is going to do the same to Bunny and then pushes her again. The main character thought that he was impatient and unyielding. After all, he had made a decision, and he would not back down from it. At this time, the main character is fighting off the maid with all her might. And seeing this, the young master says that they cannot even hold her back, and therefore he will deal with her himself. Bunny realizes that this is her last chance, and she points her finger at the maid and says that it was she who stole the brooch. The girl thought that according to physiognomy, Emmy had no inherited property, and the ability to acquire wealth was absent. In addition, rat eyes meant a tendency to envy and theft. After all, stealing someone else's property is the easiest way to escape from the clutches of poverty. The main character understands that the maid has a forward-tilted head, a darting gaze that is always directed somewhere to the side, and such people do not look far into the future and act without thinking, because they are only interested in immediate gains. Physiognomy is the ability to look at a person as a whole, not only at his natural nature, but also at his mind, thoughts, and attitude to life. Emma, confused, asks the girl what she is saying. The girl thought that, in other words, her physiognomy reflected her essence. After all, in this sense, it seems that she makes no effort to change her natural inclinations. The maid turns to the girl and says that she does not understand why. She claims that she stole the brooch, since she does not even know what she looks like. Эмма спрашивает девушку, может, чем-то она ее обидела? Hearing this, Melinda objects and says that Emma is not a thief because she is such an honest girl and would not steal the young master's valuables. Another maid supports her and says that this is a ridiculous accusation. Melinda turns to the young gentleman, informs him that Emma treated this girl best of all, and she asks her if it is right to abuse someone else's kindness like that. Bunny then suggests that they go and search Emma's room, and if they don't find anything there, she will meekly accept the brand. Emma looks at Milady and tells her that she has done nothing wrong. After all, she does not understand why she would put in so much effort. At this time, the main character thought that she knew that he would not back down until she provided evidence that she was not a thief. Bunny says that these maids are Mistress Ophelia's personal servants. She asks the master if the brooch was really stolen by Emma, and when Mistress Ophelia returns, will he allow the dirty thief to stay with her? The little girl thought about how his gaze changed immediately when he mentioned his sister, and she insists that it wouldn't hurt to check on one of her maids one more time, and asks if that's true. Milady claims that Lady Ophelia is kind and merciful because she will hide the truth and protect Emma even if she really is a thief. Hearing this, Silver thought that something was wrong. After all, he does not understand why she suddenly began to speak so calmly and thoughtfully. And where did the despair that always splashed in her eyes go? And he thinks about the fact that she seemed to have changed. My master turns to the maid and orders her to take him to his chambers. Hearing this, Emma claims that it was not her. However, the master insists on his own and orders her to take him there while he asks nicely and suggests that she not make him repeat it again. Silver tells Betty to get up, and he orders to call the knights and tell them to wait in front of this maid's room. At this time, the main character thought that her head was spinning. After all, she was so hungry that she was about to faint. However, she was gathering herself with all her might, and she understood that she couldn't do it yet. Betty reports that the maid Melinda, because of her desire to gain recognition, is very two-faced and talkative, because she probably talks about the affairs of Duke Credel to strangers. And besides this, Maid knows about the curse of Lady Ophelia and her. And it is unlikely that they will allow her to continue working in the castle. This is a prudent decision. Milady reports that the third handmaiden has the character of a swindler, from which he has probably suffered indirectly, since she has nothing to boast about except working for the Duke of Credel's family, and so she is probably using his name for selfish purposes. Betty looks at the young gentleman and suggests that he investigate if he doesn't believe her. A few minutes later, Silver orders Emma to leave the dungeon, and he screams, saying that his mother's earrings disappeared 3 years ago, and Bunny was brought a year later, so she cannot be responsible for this theft. And at that moment, the young gentleman thought that a simple maid was trying to deceive him, because the fake who not only looks like Ophelia, but also wants to take her place copying the speech and behavior of the original. Silver reflects on the fact that it was logical to assume that this girl was the one stealing his sister's things, and he thinks about how, when the brooch disappeared, the maid knew that he would suspect Bunny first and took advantage of that. The young master orders to call the investigator and obtain a confession, and also to conduct an investigation regarding the other maids, and also to find out about their affairs inside the mansion, as well as about their reputation outside it, about family and friends. Silver, looking at the girl, thought that maybe she died, but hearing that she was breathing, he thought that it would be a shame if she died after everything that she had gone through for Ophelia. The young man, turning to the girl, calls her trash and says that she should stop pretending. And at that moment, the main character falls to the floor. Silver lifted the girl, and he doesn't understand why she is so light, but looking at her, he saw that she is skin and bones. He wonders if she even exists. He looked at her clothes and thought that these are rags. The guy reflects on the fact that Milady has been living in the mansion for 2 years already, and he does not understand why she looks even worse than before she came here. The young gentleman looked at the girl's room and saw a lot of cobwebs as well as the food she was eating. At this time, the main character remembers that grandmother says that physiognomy is not an easy fortune-telling since it includes both statistics and historical research. During the Joseon dynasty, physiognomy was included in the list of exams along with Oriental medicine. The girl recalls that grandmother fortune-teller was her mentor and moral support and her only support. The girl with black hair says that the times of the Chaeshong dynasty are long gone, and the grandmother says that she is shameless and explains that no matter how the world changes, some things remain the same. The elderly woman suggests listening to Milady, that the basis of the prediction is the universe and its swirls of energy. The main character thought that if you believe her grandmother, another body and another world do not change the weather, since here there are still 4 seasons: the sun, the moon, as well as the planets that make up the 5 elements. Betty understands that even though the world she is used to has changed, and even she has ended up in a different dimension, the principles of the universe have remained the same. After all, every person is the universe, and human birth and death are analogous to its cycle. The arrangement of energy in a person's body is shown on his face. Reading it is called physiognomy. After all, what is destined for a person is hidden in his features, and therefore, with the help of physiognomy, one can learn both his essence and his destiny. The main character thought that her grandmother's lessons were not meaningless, and they were useful to her in life. Lying in bed, Bunny thought that she was dying from the pain, and her body was pulsating as if someone had beaten her. However, no matter how bad she felt, there was no one to take care of her. The girl understands that her body is still small, so the non-stop increase in temperature could lead to a disastrous outcome. Milady lies in bed, but her soul seems to be screaming for help and salvation. The main character does not understand whether all this is because she is in the body of a child or because she is in someone else's body, and she ponders where she gets such useless thoughts. After all, it is pointless. Bunny thought that she was silly, and no matter how far she stretched her hand, there was still no one here who could help her. But suddenly, the main character felt that someone touched her hand, and opening her eyes, she saw Duke Credel next to her. Не так давно хаос правил здесь, вызванный демоническими монстрами, которые волшебники и их приспешники выпустили в мир. Часто целая страна была охвачена хаосом disappear from the map in a day, and when the world was on the verge of collapse, one hero dealt with the Demon King, using his silver blade and ice power. And then he froze and sealed the core that served as the source of life for the monsters. The defeated sorcerers were exiled to the north, and the hero, together with his brother, founded a new state, the Empire of Abyssus. And if the emperor was compared to the sun, illuminating an already bright world, the Grand Duke was the moon, bringing light to a world drowned in darkness. The moon was clear and bright, with a blue glow, and as a result, the Credel family became known as the Credels of the Blue Moon. And now, they have incredible influence in the empire. The girl looked at Duke Credel and thought about what kind of hero he could be, because for her, he was a trickster who tamed an orphan from the slums and used her to ward off a curse. Bunny remembers that when she saw this gentleman near the garbage, and after he asked if she would go with him, the girl did not dare to refuse him. Lying in bed, the girl looked at the Duke and said that he never meant anything to her either. The main character felt that the gentleman had let go of her hand and thought that it was a dream since it was unlikely that the Grand Duke would come to visit Bunny. The girl remembers that he himself told her to live as if she were dead. The next day, Milady thought about how a feeling of freshness was spreading throughout her body, and she thought about how she felt just fine and didn't understand why. Bunny opened her eyes and saw a man standing next to her. She looked at his face and saw rounded eyebrows and eyes with a noble look. The slightly curved corners of his lips seemed to have been painted with a brush. His hair was soft, straightened, and neatly styled. The girl noticed that his posture was perfect, and his legs were so long that they seemed to reach for the ground. After all, such people usually have the energy of wood, which is responsible for a clear mind and intelligence, and she realized that this was a typical future scientist. The girl examined the smooth line of the bridge of the nose. The shape of the ears is similar to a wolf's. The tip of the nose resembles an arrowhead. Narrow milk from the examined outer part. Emotionless cold, perhaps even cruel. And the guy looks like a lonely pine tree on the edge of a cliff. However, in reality, he is a wolf hiding in his wings and claws. The main character realized that Angelus, the eldest son of Pretzel, was in front of her, and the girl thought that this was why she suddenly felt better, and she assumed that he could have used his power on her. These are powers that have been passed down from generation to generation since the Abyssus Empire was called the Abyss Kingdom, because they are only available to those with blue blood in their veins. Grand Duke Credel possesses the power of ice. His eldest son, Angelus, has the power of healing. The main character remembers that she looked at him and says that maybe he was the one who cured her. Hearing this, the guy asks why he should cure her, and he claims that her wounds are none of his business, and he suggests that she deal with them herself. Angelus claims that she never bothered him with such trifles again. The main character remembers that when Bunny was bleeding, he didn't lift a finger. The girl got out of bed and saw that this room was Ophelia's real one. Angelus tells her not to even think that she took Ophelia's place, just because she suddenly found herself in the main palace. Hearing this, Milady does not understand what nonsense this is, since she did not come here herself, but woke up here. And she thought that she does not care, since she has already gotten used to such treatment. And the girl says that she is not deceiving herself. However, the young gentleman tells her not to pretend, and he suggests that she be honest with herself, because she shouldn't think that she is now part of the family, because it will hurt her more later. Angelus reports that she drove away Ophelia's favorite maids and ended up in the main palace, and probably because of this, she thinks that the whole world now belongs to her. Bonnie says that she only learned about the maid's dismissal from the young master, and she explains that they falsely accused her of stealing jewelry. Hearing this, the young gentleman says that something tells him that the accusations are not entirely false. Milady thought about how his past would always make her suspect, and she realized that this time Bunny was the obvious victim, and she asked if he knew how the maids had treated her over the past years. Angelus says, "What's wrong with that? He knows all of it." Hearing this, the main character doesn't understand how he can say such things, or if he knows everything. The young gentleman reports that since it was their oversight, they have decided to compensate for the damage with a reward. At this time, the girl thought that this is why he cured Bunny. The main character just wanted to calmly discuss the situation, but everyone in the Criddle family is trying to hurt the poor girl, and she doesn't understand whether there is no other way. Milady thought that it was good that the real Bunny didn't have to go through that anymore. Angelus reports that he doesn't know what she did, but her father allowed her to stay in the main palace. Hearing this, the main character was surprised and understood why she was put in Ophelia's room, and she thought that the Grand Duke had gone mad, because letting the baths into the main palace was the same as officially introducing her to the world. The girl understands that she will be treated as Ophelia's official replacement. At this time, the main character says that the young master mentioned that she would be given some kind of reward. Angelus says that he knew she would ask about it, and he knows that her wish is obvious, and so he will say right away that she cannot wish to replace Ophelia for real. The young master insists that she should not even dare to call him brother when they are alone. After all, he will not allow her to do so. The girl replies that she hopes she will not have to call him that, even in public hearing. This the young gentleman is surprised. The main character understands that she will now live in the main palace, and at that time, she thought about what she hates because she was once betrayed by people like him, and she thought about how he should not even dream of it because she will not tolerate such an attitude. Bunny reflects that the warm room and the nice clothes and all this did not come for free. After all, in the end, there will be a price for kindness, and these people will make her do her duty in proportion to how she is treated. Milady thinks that she won't even be able to resist, because her every move will be constantly watched, and the man sitting in front of her is already behaving exactly like that. The main character reports that as a reward, she asks him to let her out of the Grand Duchy, and reminds him that he said that she would be given some kind of reward. Hearing this, Angelus didn't understand what kind of trick this was, because she had just said that she wanted to leave the Credel family castle, and he thought that maybe this was not the same Bunny. The young gentleman smiled and said that he wished she could do it, And at that moment, I thought that the girl thought that if she said something like that, he would try to stop her. Angelus looked at the lady and thought that she was stupid, because even now his hands were itching to throw her out of Ophelia's room. Milady reports that she is glad since they agree on the same points of view. The girl says that only the Grand Duke can make such a decision, and so she would like to talk to him immediately. Betty says that she is sure that the young gentleman does not mind. Hearing this, Angelus thought that this was a hopeless idea. After all, he didn't understand where she would go when she got out of here, and her path could only be back to the dump, where there was nothing but criminals and piles of garbage. The young gentleman thought that he would see how much longer she could behave so shamelessly. After all, she would surely soon come running back and say that she was wrong, and would beg on her knees not throw her out. Angelus reflects on the fact that he should be in his office at this time. The main character, being in a large corridor, thought that it was funny because she had never been here, but she knew exactly where to go. And she remembered that when Bunny was 8 years old, she discovered a secret passage to the main creator. Milady remembers that the girl used her talents only for theft and to steal Ophelia's things, and she understands that her behavior is difficult to justify. However, the main character does not understand why she is the only one to blame for all this, because for the inhabitants of the dump, that same era of enlightenment never came. And in order to survive, they still have to deceive, intimidate, and finish off. Bunny had been like that since birth, and she wasn't going to change overnight just because she was adopted by the Cradelles. And besides, she only stole things that showed love to Ophelia from the household. Bunny wanted so badly to be treated like that, and she wanted to be a loved daughter. The Cradell family cannot forgive Bunny for what she did, and yet if they had tried to meet her halfway, and if they had given the girl a chance and taken care of her, and then asked why she did it, then everything could have turned out differently. The main character opened the door to the Duke's office and saw him, then thought that he decided that it was the butler or his assistant, since he didn't even look at who entered. The Duke asks what she forgot here. And at that moment, Milady thought that he understood who was in front of him, and without even raising her head, the girl agreed with this and thought that it was good that he did not throw her out. Bunny reports that she just found out that she was allowed to stay in the main palace, and she thanks them for their kindness, but she doesn't need it. Hearing this, the Duke was very surprised and even angry. The girl thought that he had broken the iron pen by simply squeezing his fingers tighter. Mr. Cradell looked at the girl and asked what she had just said. The main character looked at him and thought that, even after adopting Bunny, he was so indifferent to her that she wondered if maybe he wasn't a hero at all, but just an ordinary bastard, because the image of the blue moon perfectly matches the hero's mask. Just one penetrating look, his slanted eyes will clutter anyone. High nose, beautifully shaped lips, like scarlet petals, and the face and body are perfectly balanced and symmetrical. The main character understands that the Duke spent most of his life on the battlefield, but his skin remained flawless like that of the moon god, who stands guard over justice. A messenger from heaven, one who blesses the ground he walks on. A naturally gifted person destined to live a long life. The girl looked at the Duke and thought that it was funny to hear him praised for his good nature, although a hero cannot be a hero for everyone. The main character looked at the color of his eyes and remembered that it reminded her of blue water. However, there is no hint of a living sparkle in them, and why are they more like a riverbed that dried up during a severe drought? The eyes are the mirror of a person's soul, and now the once dazzling shine in the hero's eyes has faded, leaving only blackness like ashes scattered in the wind, and the girl does not understand how one can stay alive with such an aura. The Count looks at the girl and tells her that he asked her a question. She replies that she would like to offer him something else. The main character explains that now that his daughter's curse has come to her body, she no longer needs to stay here. And since it is her fault, Lady Ophelia cannot return to the Cradell family castle and asks if that is so. Milady says that is why she asks to be sent back to the slums, and she claims that she will disappear from his sight so that he can live with Lady Ophelia again. The Count asks her where she got that from. The girl explains that she has heard similar things from others more than once. Betty explains that if a cursed person and the host to whom the curse was transferred are in close proximity to each other, there is a risk that the curse will return to the one who was cursed in the first place. and it is because of this that Mrs. Ophelia lives somewhere outside the city. The Count wonders who told her about this, and at that moment, the girl thought that it could be just rumors. However, she understands that the inhabitants of the castle believe that the curse works exactly like that. That is why the Kreddle brothers have resigned themselves to her presence here. The man looks at the girl and tells her not to take this seriously, because it is not true. Hearing this, the main character thought that everything was lost. Since she was going to appeal to his paternal feelings, he proposed a reunion with Ophelia. The girl asks why Madame Ophelia was sent away from the castle, and the Count replies that it is none of her business. And at that time, the main character thought that he was not going to share such important information with Bunny. And even though she took the blow instead of his daughter, Milady informs him that if he wishes, she will give him a vow of silence, and if he wishes, he can put her under surveillance. She informs him that it is not necessary to send her to the dump, and he can simply exile her outside the empire, and so she will go wherever he wishes. The man pours the girl back into his room and says that he made the best choice for his daughter. Since she is here and Ophelia is there, and in the near future, this will not change. Betty thought that she was talking to a wall, and after all, one word from him, and she would leave the castle in the blink of an eye. However, now, on the contrary, she will have to stay in this hell forever. The main character looked at the Count and thought that it was clear from his eyes that he couldn't even collect his thoughts. After all, in that look indifferently watching the others, one could read only boredom, and such a person would never understand the situation of another. Milady reflects on the fact that the Count does not show open hostility towards her, but irritates her no less than the other Kreddles. And she understands that the Duke initially had neither warmth nor motivation to mess with Bunny, and yet this makes the main character incredibly angry. The girl turns to the Count and says that the honorable head of the Blue Moon family, and thanks him for giving her a chance for a better life to a low-born person like her. And she says that she understands perfectly well that he does not like her, and because she shamelessly stole Mrs. Ophelia's things, the main character asks if he could come to her halfway just once. However, the man replies that she is safe here. The lady replies that for her, there is no difference between the slums and the Kreddle family castle. And at that moment, the girl thought that it was probably even worse here, since at least there was a chance to escape from the dump. But here, Bunny had no chance to hide from the local non-humans, no matter how much she wanted it. The main character says that she doesn't want to starve anymore, and she doesn't want to be criticized for no reason, and she says that she doesn't want to fall down the stairs again because of someone else, and she doesn't want to live like that anymore. And at that moment, the girl herself did not notice how the Count came up to her and wiped her tears. Seeing him, the girl thinks about the fact that the Count thought that she would cry in front of him. A man with long blonde hair reports that Ophelia has contracted an infectious disease and is currently in quarantine. She will return to the castle when she is fully recovered. The Count tells the girl to go to bed, and even the divine power won't help her if she doesn't get a good rest. Hearing this, the main character thought that this Duke ordered Angelus to heal the fake. Betty thought she had had enough, and she tells the Count that she understood him perfectly. Leaving the office, the main character thought that it was good that the Count had clearly and distinctly shown her what kind of attitude she could expect, because Bunny was just a tool for removing the curse and nothing more. And thanks to him, she realized once and for all what the Blue Moon family was. The girl reflects that if they want her to play the role of a fake daughter so badly, then she will do it, because she will hold her breath as if she were dead and be obedient to please. And it is easy for her, because she lived like that until her death. The main character thought that if he took his eyes off the nameless instrument, it would simply disappear without a trace. Disappear and return the curse to its rightful owner. Bunny, as soon as she thought about what she should do next, her composure returned by itself, and so she will act gradually step by step, because all that remains for her is to understand how to escape from there. The girl wonders if there is a way to escape the Grand Duke's pursuit, and if only Bunny could use magic. The main character came near a large tree, and in the indicated place she was looking for something, and did not understand when the grass had managed to grow so much. She thought that she should have taken a shovel with her. The thing the girl is looking for has already been found, and at that time she thought about how Bunny stole this thing when she lived in the dump. Looking at it, she remembered that it was a magical artifact. The crook who forced Bunny to steal bragged about it at every opportunity. The main character thought that Bunny was a real genius because she was able to steal from the thief himself, and she hopes that the magic contained inside at least something will be able to help her. Milady looks at the artifact and she doesn't know how it works. But suddenly, this thing falls, and the girl thought that someone's voice suddenly sounded in her head. Betty thought that since she only had one earring out of a pair, and maybe it was through magic that she could communicate with the owner of the other one. The girl looking at this thought that she felt uneasy somehow. After all, that swindler said that he stole her from the palace, and she was thinking that there was nothing terrible in this, since no one was looking for the earring. The main character looks at the earring, and at that moment hears a voice asking who she is. The girl thought that he was speaking quietly, but it was audible, and that it was clearly a child's voice, and a very pleasant one at that. The voice characteristics complement the knowledge gained through physiognomic analysis. After all, the main character hears a clear and sonorous voice, without any unnecessary vibrations, and she understands that even though the person on the other end of the line is still a child, the tone of his voice remains even from the beginning to the end of the phrase. Milady understands that, besides, although he said only a couple of words, and it would be enough to attract everyone's attention, and she says her name, and in response, she hears a question from the rabbit. The girl objects and says that it is her name, and at that moment, she thought about who decided to call her that, since the name is really strange. Bunny hears that he spent all 8 years of his life waiting for an answer, but instead received a rabbit as his interlocutor. Hearing this, the main character thought that he was still just a baby, and the most important thing for her was not to laugh. The voice asks where she got this earring from, and the lady answers that it fell into her hands by accident. The voice is surprised and asks when this happened. Bonnie explains that she was stolen 2 years ago, long before, and so she must have been to many people. The voice asks why he should believe her. Milady replies that it is up to him to decide whether to believe her or not, and asks why he has been waiting for an answer for 8 years. She explains that she knows from experience that waiting for something without any guarantees is real torture. The boy claims that he waited patiently and kept wanting to hear what they would say to him. And at that time, he thought that they were playing a silent game with him, but it turns out that they didn't even hear him. The main character thought that an artifact in the form of earrings, with the help of which one can communicate with each other, looks like a sign of someone's love. 8 years ago, the war had just ended, and the peace that had come was fragile. And that means that the owner of the second earring either died or lost it, but never got around to finding it. The unknown boy claimed that he had decided that he and his mother were not worth looking for. Or perhaps, he had simply forgotten about their existence. Hearing this, the girl thought that, judging by the intonation of her interlocutor, the second option was the most likely, and it seemed that the boy knew who his father was. The young gentleman says that it's all over because this man means nothing to him. The main character understands that anger, hatred, despair, humility, after all, these are the horrors that this boy went through to experience such feelings, and it seems to her that he has not been trying to find any hope for a long time. Betty thought about taking the earring for herself, and she says that he will have to find another way to contact this person. And since she is unlikely to be able to return the earring to its original owner, she says that this is the end of communication. But suddenly the boy screams and tells her to wait, and not to break the connection. At this point, the lady realizes that, of course, this is just an 8-year-old boy who has waited his whole life for a miracle and ended up being cruelly disappointed. And she thinks that his family seems to have a complicated history, and she realizes that she doesn't want to get into it. The girl asks why he doesn't interrupt, and she suggests that he speak because she is listening. The boy asks her not to throw away the earring, and said nothing more. And at that time, the main character thought that he stopped her, and in the end, he broke off the connection himself, and she was only worried about him in vain. Betty thought about how she had so much hope for this artifact, but in the end, it turned out to be useless, and she just seals it away forever. Suddenly, the main character heard Silver calling her trash, and he asks her what she's doing here. The guy claims that she's doing something weird again and asks her about it. After all, it's no wonder to him that she was so calm. And Silver looked under the tree and asked what kind of hole it was, and he claims that she was trying to hide something. The girl replies that she was looking for something to eat. The guy was surprised to hear this, and she thought that she said the first thing that came to mind because she was in a hurry. Silver asks in surprise if she eats dirt now. The girl does not understand why dirt and answers that she ate grass. The young gentleman cries out that she is sick and that it would be better for her to eat dirt, since in the north most of the grass is toxic. I heard the main character. I thought that she didn't know that. And she claims that she thinks she ate something like that at the dump, and it tasted normal, although her stomach ached. Silver ordered the cook to prepare food, and he brought the girl to the kitchen and said that she should eat it all, glavna heroinia. The main character looked at the table and thought that she could only eat so much food here in a whole year. The young gentleman tells her to eat it all and says that he will check later whether she has eaten it or not. Betty realized that she was in no condition to eat this fatty food, and she thought that since she was now living in the main palace, this was a new kind of violence. However, the girl calms herself down and thinks that she doesn't care about this bullying. After all, the DOA said that the difference between a good and a bad nem is incredibly thin. After all, this means that any crisis can become a favorable opportunity. The main character takes the bell and shakes it. A minute later, a maid enters the room and asks if the young mistress has called. The girl asks if she can move this food to the dining room. The maid asks if she is talking about the great dining hall. However, Milady objects and says no, and orders all this food to be taken to the servants' dining room. And at that moment, she thought that she would not be able to eat all this alone. And Betty understands that servants are allowed to take food left by the master. The girl says that she will only eat soup, and she can take everything else. The cook looked at her and thought about the fact that the food hadn't even been touched. The main character says that since it's already late, she should call those who work at night and heat up the rest in the morning. The maid says that the master ordered this food especially for her. Upon hearing this, the girl asks how she will eat it all by herself and explains that she has just recovered from being bedridden due to illness. The girl says that she is sure that the maid is seeing her in person for the first time and suggests that she simply consider it a small gift for taking care of her in the future and suggests that she not worry so much. Hearing this, the maid can't even believe it, and she thought that the young mistress asked the young master to cook all this food especially for them servants. The cook doesn't understand otherwise why the young master would feed her this greasy food if she had just recovered from an illness. The maid reflects that if the young mistress had asked for several dishes to be prepared, especially for the servant, the chef and his assistants would never have tried so hard. The maid suggests that Milady said that this food was for her, just so that they could taste these exquisite dishes. The maid screams and says that she understands everything and will pass on her words to everyone. Hearing this, the young mistress says that she thinks she can handle it. The girl thought that you are a maid, rather wide eyebrows, a large mouth, and slightly pulled back, and neat lips. And she is frivolous and naive, but still does a good job. And this maid is pure at heart, but frankly speaking naive as a child. The main character thought that she should treat her to dessert, since she helped her deal with her little problem. At this time, the girl remembers that she was in a hurry, and still took the artifact with her, and now does not understand what to do with it. She took it and says that she will think about it later. Lying in bed, the girl does not understand what the noise is. However, when she opens her eyes, she sees a young gentleman next to her who tells her to wake up quickly. Betty looked at him and asked if he was crazy. Hearing this, he asked if she had anything else to say. The main character thought that she should bow at his feet for waking her up. After all, he entered someone else's room in the morning and sits with his nose in the air. Milady asks if he was waiting for her to wake up. The guy objects and says that he just arrived. The girl turns away from him and says that his lordship has a firm intention. Young master asks her if she watches her behavior at least a little, and she says it seems that her father did not hear a drop of sincerity in her words. Betty thought that she was fed up, but she had no right to express her disappointment in his presence. After all, she had to stay in the main palace until she found a way to escape, and after all, she was the only one who was at a disadvantage here. The main character reports that his lordship probably rejected her request because she was simply expressing dissatisfaction, and she thinks that it was because she had been in the tower for a long time and was very happy to hear that his lordship would allow her to stay in the palace. The girl reports that she wanted to get out of the castle so much, even if only for a short time, that she misspoke. And at that time, she thought about giving in to Silver, and then seeing how he would react. Milady understands that by continuing to find fault, he will eventually understand that he is acting unreasonably, and she asks how she could have ended up in her peaceful life in the castle of Credel. And she says that she has no other place where she could stay. Betty thought that even when she heard such insulting words, she still continued to speak, because he thought that compensating for the damages suffered by the maids would be enough. The main character informs that from now on, she will be obedient, and as a clone of Mrs. Ophelia, she will do everything perfectly and will never do anything that can spoil the name of Credel. The girl says that it would be nice if she could someday walk freely outside the castle. And at this time, the young master does not understand why he sees this image of a kind girl who asks her little brother when she can go outside the castle, and this image reminds him of Ophelia. Silver thought that it was all in the past, and he looked at the girl and thought that she was not his sister, because he had to look at things without really paying attention to his inner feelings. The young master does not understand what kind of person is hiding behind this insignificant face, and he thinks that if Bunny does not appear in high society until adulthood, it would be important to pass on the curse, but also to think about what will happen after Ophelia returns home. The guy doesn't understand why she suddenly became calm, because her behavior doesn't yet inspire confidence. The young gentleman turns to the girl and says that this is the last time he will trust her. Hearing this, the lady does not understand where the last time came from if he never trusted her before. Silver reports that he heard that Ophelia's maids embezzled her money. The main character heard this and was surprised, because she did not understand when Bunny had managed to get them, and she asks the young gentleman what money he was talking about. The guy reports that he is talking about monthly benefits in the amount of 200,000 fests, which she received for 2 whole years. Hearing this, the main character was surprised, because she calculated that in 2 years, she would have bought a small mansion in the center of the capital with that kind of money, and she can't believe that they left all that money to the maids, and it seems to her that it's a joke. The main character realizes that Bunny has been isolated from everyone and abandoned. She asks the guy who sent the money. The young gentleman replies that if it is a question of budget, then Mother is responsible for everything, because she is soft-hearted and therefore very upset that this happened. The girl understands that the Grand Duchess was a saint, and after the death of Ophelia's mother and her brothers, she became the Duke's second wife. And since she lived her entire life in the temple, she probably didn't know anything until the very end. Silver tells her that it's obvious that the maids have caused her a lot of trouble, and he's here primarily for her reward. He tells her that if she needs anything, she can ask for anything. Hearing this, Bunny understands why he waited. After all, every time he started talking, he got on her nerves. The guy tells her that she can ask for whatever she wants, but only once, and then stroking her head. Milady rejects her hand and apologizes. Then she asks if he could take his hand off her. The girl looked at the guy and thought that it seemed like he didn't expect her to be against it. After all, it was obvious, and she didn't understand how he could even think that she would want something like that. And if she were a real bunny, she would have cried with happiness already. The main character turns to the young gentleman and says that she does not need any useless things that are worth nothing to her. The girl says that she will not play family with him, and she reminds him that she will never call him Big Brother, and she does not think that she will ever be able to call him that. Bunny turns to Silver and asks if she can say what she wants. The guy offers her to speak. Milady explains that since she will be acting as a substitute for Princess Ophelia, she thinks that a decent budget is needed that will match her role. And at this time, she thought about asking for the money to be given to her without any extra work. A few days later, a large sum of money was in her account, and these payments were signed by Angelus Credel. I gave her the supporting document. The young gentleman informs that in addition, from now on, a decent amount will be allocated every month as expenses for decent maintenance. And at that time, the girl thought with delight that he really did it. And therefore, he did not lie. Silver looked at the girl and asked why she had that look. She replied that she could just be calm now and not worry about delicious food. The main character thought that if she saved up enough money, she could escape and build a big castle on a remote island. and if she wanted to avoid surveillance and cash it out unnoticed, she would have to resort to some tricks, and she doesn't understand how much money she can spend. The lady looked at Angelus and thought that he could not be deceived. The young gentleman informs her that he will take about a month off next year to recuperate, and so he suggests that the girl simply try not to get into trouble. After all, they will resume training at that time. Bunny looked at him and thought that she didn't understand why he was grumbling like an old man. Because he was only 14, and he was like a storm, suddenly appearing and just as suddenly leaving. The girl thought that training was in a month, and she decided to go into the Grand Duke's office and read some books. The main character thinks that if she gets a mentor like in her past life, she better start preparing in advance. Because for Bunny, she is old enough and smart enough, and she is only 14. Suddenly, Milady heard a voice asking if she was there. She looked at the artifact and thought about whether to answer it or not. After all, it would be wiser to just ignore it, and she didn't understand why she should be distracted by this child. A strange boy claims that she dumped him, and he knew it. Hearing this, the lady says that, if so, then what of it? The voice speaks with delight about what it means she didn't throw it away, and the lady confirms his words. She says that she doesn't understand why she should throw it away, because this earring is hers. And if she does, then the boy will never have the opportunity to contact the person he has been waiting for all this time. Hearing this, the guy sighed and asked what this had to do with her. At this time, the main character thought that maybe she should just bury her on the side of the road. She asks the boy why he called her. He replies that he just wanted to know if she was there or not. Then the lady asks what's wrong with his voice. After all, it sounds like a robot. However, the guy claims that maybe she misheard it. Milady thought that the timbre was different, because when she first heard his voice during their last conversation, he had impressed her very much, and so now she could clearly hear the difference. And at that moment, the girl thought that something must have happened. And for a moment, she thought about asking, but she didn't, because it seemed to her that it wouldn't be easy for him to answer. The main character remembers that in her past life, holding back her emotions was commonplace, and so pretending that everything was fine had already become a deeply ingrained habit, because it was unlikely that he would find it easy to express his thoughts at all. And besides her, there was no one who could listen to him. Bunny tells him that she is lonely too, and she has no one to talk to and nothing to do, and she has a lot of free time. After all she planned to do today was read a few books, and if he wants to tell her something, he can do it at any time. The girl did not hear an answer, and thought that he had become completely quiet, and she remembered that when they first contacted, he was much more talkative. Milady says that the weather is very nice today and asks if he is outside. The guy replies that the sun has already risen. Hearing this, the main character thought that she had just realized how long it had been standing. The guy says that the sky is blue, and the girl confirms his words, saying that it is unattainable and pure blue, without a single cloud. The boy reports that he sees a cloud, and it reminds him of a rabbit. The girl claims that it must be her, and after her words, the voice became silent. The girl explains that he himself asked if she was a rabbit. The guy explains that he didn't mean the real thing, and at this time, Bunny reflects on how much time has passed since she last felt so peaceful and so calm. The voice announces that night will soon come again, and this will happen tomorrow, and the day after tomorrow, and it will continue without stopping. Milady asks him if the nights seem scary and endless to him. The boy replies that he doesn't like the dark, and she asks him if that's what scares him, and he agrees and replies that it is. Bunny says that in the winter night sky, if you look closely, you can see a rabbit, and also if you connect the stars, they can become objects, people and animals, and even a rabbit. The main character tells that you can't run away from the darkness, even if you close your eyes, because it will grow and become bigger because of fear. The lady recalls that she strove for knowledge more and more, and physiognomy, numerology, astronomy, in a room with curtained windows. She studied everything about the stars. The main character remembers that she was afraid of the dark, but wanted to overcome it somehow. And so when the night came, she opened her eyes and carefully looked at the night sky. Because in the night sky, the bright moon and countless stars seemed to be rushing down, and she found a small rabbit there. The guy reports that it is an extremely tiny rabbit. The girl suggests that he find it when winter comes, and she explains that it will be very difficult because the rabbit looks like her, and she watches him from the sky. Hearing this, the guy laughed, and the girl thought that this was all because he was obedient, and she was more pleased than she expected, and simply happy. This moment of conversation with an unknown child made her forget about her situation, and no one interrupted them. The girl realized that in order to live, you don't need to please other people's opinions and tolerate other people's views. The main character reflects on the fact that she can be herself and not pretend next to him, and she says that she is simply trying to cheer him up. And so, as before, she offers him to remain her interlocutor. The girl understands that if they continue to communicate like this, then one day he will open up to her and tell her what happened. Milady looked at the earring and thought that it was ridiculous, because first he calls her, and then he puts up a wall between them. Bunny says that she won't let him leave her because he's a cutie. At this time, suddenly, the other boys threw a stone at the boy. They say that he is a miserable bastard and does not even scream, and the other boy claims that he is not my man and cannot speak. The blonde guy says that because of him, his mother ended up in the slums, and the other guy says that he goes hungry every day because of him. The boys claim that he killed Annie and therefore must die. Then they take rocks and throw them at him. Seeing this, the black-haired guy gets up from the ground, and at that time, the guys who attacked him quickly ran away and called him a monster. The dark-haired guy looked at his fist and thought that if he had fought them, he would have definitely finished them off. And then he thought if he really was a monster, if that's what everyone thought. The sound of daggers, heart-rending screams, painful cries. And if you just curl up on this street, no one will care whether you're alive or dead. The guy looks at the sky and says that he hates the dark, because he has no idea what he's capable of in total darkness. The boy realizes that he feels like he is becoming the monster they call him and cannot control his rage. He remembers the girl's words that if you look closely at the night sky, you can see a rabbit. The dark-haired young man looked at the sky and said that the cloud in the form of a rabbit disappeared, and he understands that the stars will not disperse like clouds, and he can't wait for the moment when winter comes. During this time, the main character reflects on the fact that the content of the book is fundamentally different from what Bunny was taught by her mentor. And here, there is one of two obstacles. Either he is inexperienced, or he deliberately distorted the knowledge. The girl understands that the only thing she was taught properly was a common language, and whether it is possible that their conscience has started to play. Bunny looks at the book and thinks that the ancient letters are similar, and she couldn't even imagine that Pakdoa's knowledge would be so useful. The common language is a scientific script that is easy to read and write, regardless of whether one is an aristocrat or a commoner, because conservative aristocrats tried to protect their privileges by combining the ancient letters of book writing with the official one. The main character looked at the book and saw that the ancient letters in it were too similar to any Chinese character she knew. After all, book writing is similar to Chinese, where particles are combined to form a new word. Of course, they are not that similar, but the principle of combining parts together and creating new words is somewhat reminiscent of Hanchu or Chinese. The girl understands that thanks to this, she will quickly learn to write, having only one basic book. And this reminds her of the moment when she first started learning Hangul to master Koreans. The lady remembers that the teacher said that she would first read the book herself, and once she understood everything well, she would read it to them. At this time, the main character thought that she would again be responsible for Bunny's education. After reading a few books, she says that she hopes she can handle everything. Milady looked at herself in the mirror and thought about that. At first, she thought that Bunny and Pakdoa had similar lives, because the ancient scripts that originated and developed like Chinese characters. The reverse method of counting days by dividing the year and 12 months based on the North Star. And it is the custom to give meaning to the date and time of birth. The girl looked at herself in the mirror and saw herself as an adult in the reflection and thought that maybe all this was just a coincidence. After all, this world is ideal for using your abilities. Bonnie doesn't understand if there is a reason why Pakdoa was reincarnated into this world. Suddenly, someone knocks on the door, and the lady invites her in. The maid with red hair enters the room, and the main character looked at her and recognized that it was the same innocent girl. The red-haired maid announces that she has gathered a group of maids who have volunteered to look after her temporarily. Hearing this, the girl thinks that she is fine and doing well on her own, and she does not need anyone's care. The red-haired maid tells the girl to open her mouth because her arm will fall off if she doesn't eat. However, the main character objects and says that she will eat herself. However, the maid assures that she will feed her since it will be too hard for her. The maid claims that the doctor said that she was not getting enough food, and therefore this was a bad sign, and she needed to eat well. The main character remembers that a few days ago the family doctor examined Bunny, and he said that she needs to eat well. The girl looks at the maids, who think that she will break at the slightest touch, or that the wind will blow her away. She is sure that the maids volunteered, and thinks that she only gave them food, and certainly did not expect this from them. Bunny suggests that perhaps it is because Ophelia is a symbol of peace, who loves everything. Milady realizes that she must eat if she wants to live, and this reminds her of her grandmother, who told her not to belittle and underestimate herself. Otherwise, she will end up living a miserable life. The girl remembers that her grandmother used to say that she is like a spring tree, and spring is the time when flowers bloom on the trees, and with her destiny, she will become a whole forest of spring trees. And for this, she only needs to wait until winter passes. The old woman claims that the spring tree is a symbol of strong vitality because it has sunk its roots into the frozen soil and has overcome the harsh winter frosts. However, Padoa died before that spring came. But even now, when she was in another body, Doa's fate remained that of a spring tree. And at that time, the main character thought that she should eat because she needed strength to be able to live alone, because she would have to survive to meet the new spring and wait for that day when the flowers finally bloom. And for that, she would have to try hard to survive the winter here. The maid says that she is a good girl and asks for some more food. She offers to eat another piece, and then asks if her stomach hurts. At this time, the lady thought that she still cannot get used to this kind of treatment. A few minutes later, the main character heard someone knocking on her door, and then he invites her in. The maid Angela entered the room and said that from today on, the mistress had been assigned other maids. The red-haired maid says that they have heard nothing about it. However, the head maid tells them to return to their places immediately. The maid informs that the young mistress has not yet finished her meal. Upon hearing this, Angela asks if they are going to obey the order. The maid explains that she meant that they cannot return to their seats until the mistress has finished her meal. And the red-haired maid confirms her words and says that even the maids are not disturbed during meals. And therefore, she must let the young mistress finish her meal. Angela says that the newly appointed maids will take care of the young mistress's food, and she suggests that they not be stubborn and do as they are ordered. Betty asks the maid her name, and she says her name, Candace Lady Gavarie. Ladies say it's a sweet name, and she'll remember it. Hearing this, the red-haired girl asks why the lady doesn't ask her name. Head maid Angela informs that the maids who will look after her have already been appointed, and this decision cannot be reversed, and she is sure that the mistress already knows about it. Bunny asks whose decision it is, and who gave her the right to command here. The maid argues that it is quite logical that she is responsible for the appointment of maids. The main character wonders if everything depends on her, and if she is in charge of everything here. At this time, the girl thought about how Angela knew that Bunny was just a cover, and yet the Grand Duke allowed her to live in the palace, and she treated her like this. After all, she thought that a person who received the position of head maid knew how to behave properly. The lady looked at Angela and saw a hooked nose, which since ancient times such a nose shape was treated with great respect, considering its owner to be someone outstanding. The girl understands that the most important thing is the eyes, and if they look kind, then the person is brave and wise. But if the eyes are evil, then the person is smart, but with his good intellect does nothing but bad deeds. The main character looked at the head maid and thought that she was not smart enough to understand what was going on. After all, it seems that she has a very reliable patron whom she trusts. And if so, then there is someone behind her who pulls the strings, although she can naturally fit into everyday life. Bunny realizes that if she screws up, Angela might seize her right to live here. The girl asks the head maid if she thinks it makes sense to be looked after by maids she knows nothing about. The woman claims that the lady will not be able to change the maids who have already been assigned in any case. Banny says that he will say it differently and tells her to bring the resumes of these maids. And it would be better if she brings the resumes of all the maids of the castle, and of course, including her. The young lady claims that Angela said that it was her responsibility. Hearing this, the woman replies that she does not know whether she has the right to show them to her or not. The girl asks the maid who dared to take her job, and she asks if she wants the main character to go and scold them for her, and she wonders if the maid thinks that's too unreasonable a demand. Angela doesn't understand what this brat is up to, and she thinks that if only she didn't ask to see her resume, and she doesn't understand why she needs them. However, the woman understands that she cannot get out of it and orders one of the maids to bring her resume. Bunny looks at the resume and thought that the moment of birth here is a valuable thing, and the date and time of birth itself, because here is the same calendar system of a year with 12 months and a week of 7 days. So if you convert them to a lunar calendar, then luck is determined from the moment of birth, so it cannot be changed until you become an adult. Among the 10 gods, she has developed Zhenyin, which means that there is a high probability that she received a quality education and had a gentle character, thanks to the help of her mother and the adults around her. However, from the age of 25, fortune begins to work very unfavorably, and because the strong energy of Shinja-jin emanates, it seems that on the sand spit, where there is already a lot of water, the fire is completely extinguished. In addition, the Songmuncheon collide with each other. As a result, even the earth that can hold back the water collapses. Perhaps at this time, you and the family that supported her experienced serious changes, and the balance was completely disrupted. At this time, the headmaid looked at the young lady, and she thought that in front of her was only a little girl, and she did not understand why she was so nervous. And then the woman screamed, saying that she had seen enough. Angela claims that she has wasted enough time, and the girl should be dressed as befits the Credell family. Bunny calls the woman to him and whispers in her ear, asking if she is pretending to be dead. Hearing this, the woman is surprised, and the girl thought that some things do not match what is stated in the resume. After all, she has made a lot of efforts to hide her past. The main character knows what this woman did, and when she was about 25, a catastrophe happened in the supporting family. The balance was completely upset, and therefore she began to have health problems, and most likely the problem was related to the stomach. After all, given the level of medicine here, and her situation, she would not have lasted long. The young lady thought that the headmaid looked perfectly healthy, and she said that she was brave. However, Angela says she doesn't understand what the lady is talking about. Bunny explains that the headmaid probably knows what happened to Princess Ophelia's 3 maids. Then she says that she must have been mistaken because they were just unlucky and asks if that's why they were kicked out. The young lady explains that they dared to touch the master's things. They committed fraud under the prestige of the family and spread rumors, and she found out and reported it. The main character asks the maid what she thinks the punishment will be for someone who came to the duchy with the identity of a person who has already died, and she asks if she can take on all the responsibilities. Although from the outside, Bunny is a princess who was directly adopted by the head of the family and brought to the main residence, which allowed her to pretend to be Ophelia. The young lady asks if she wants. Then she will personally tell the master of the house what the headmaid did. Hearing this, Angela kneels before her mistress and says that she was wrong and that she interfered with her meal. The young mistress claims that she has thrown out her maids without her permission and also introduces her people to her at her own request. The girl reports that instead of treating her like a princess, Angela dared to talk to her carelessly and impudently, thereby committing crimes. The main character suggests that the woman go and tell the head of the family about it herself and asks if she can do it. Bunny says that if she doesn't want to, there is a second option, and she has to tell that her identity is a person who has been dead for a long time. The headmaid desperately says that she will do it, and then quickly leaves the room, almost knocking the maid off her feet. Angela, at this time, thought that this is a little girl, thinks that she will simply do as she pleases. And Anna thinks about the fact that the girl knows her secret, and this does not change anything, because she will only have to explain her situation to him and ask for mercy. When the red-haired maid entered the young mistress's room, she was very happy because she called her by name. Bonnie asks if by any chance she met the headmaid on her way here, and asks which way she was going. Reuben says that she was going in the opposite direction. Hearing this, the main character thought that it didn't make much of a difference, whether this maid would go and confess to the Duke or not. After all, everything had actually gone as expected, and she thought that if she were allowed to decide this matter herself, she would run to the culprit of all this. The girl does not understand who the person is, who is hiding behind the headmaid and controlling the whole situation. Angela came to the Duchess Yours, greeted her, and at that time, she thought that she would have to first kneel down and say that her kind and soft-hearted mistress should have mercy on her, and then cry, and say that Bunny threatened her, that it was unfair. The Duchess asks what happened. However, at this time, the gentleman enters the room. The headmaid, when she saw him, does not understand why he is here, and he is not as kind as the lady. Angela says that she would like to say something important, and the young master asks if she wants him to leave. The maid replies that she does not. The headmaid says that she is asking for forgiveness because of her carelessness. Hearing this, the young master says that, since it is so, then let her tell him too. Hearing this, Angela says that she would rather come another time, and the young gentleman asks, "What is it?" because she said it was urgent. The woman replies that it is a secret. The young master, hearing this, says that the headmaid, supernatural information that even he does not know about, and asks her about it. The Duchess turns to the maid and says that everything is fine, and therefore she can speak. The blonde guy claims that if she says that, it means that Angela has secrets from the family, and at that time, the maid thought that if she thinks about it, the young master hates this girl and kicked out those maids for the sake of his own sister. The head maid reflects on the fact that he really deep down also wants to get rid of this trash as soon as possible. And if she says it, it will awaken in him an even stronger desire, because new maids were really selected for the fake princess. And the woman hopes that perhaps the gentleman will understand. She says that since they do not know what other tricks she can do, she has formed a team of people who specialize in secret stalking so that they can control her well. The head maid informs that if the fake does not do this, then her every move will be reported. Since she will work in the main palace, she will not be able to control her much without them. And so I would like to know if it is possible to isolate her from the whole world and tame her only with food. The woman says that if the girl does not obey, she will die of hunger. Hearing this, the young gentleman grabs her by the throat and asks if she is going to starve a child who is already skinned to bone, and he asks if she would like to try it herself. "We'll see." This Duchess tells Silver to stop because this woman could die. The guy replies that people don't die that easily. The Countess says that she does not understand how such a terrible idea came to her mind. And she says that if you carelessly direct force at your subordinates, it can turn into violence and suggest listening to the reasons. The young gentleman lets the woman go and says that he sees no other explanation except that she has lost her mind and wants to die. Silver pulled out his sword and asked the woman why she said something like that in front of her mother, and he asked if she wanted to terrify a man with a weak soul. The maid reports that her mistress ordered her to do this. Hearing this, the young gentleman asks if she has really gone mad. After all, he does not understand that the mother ordered the child to be watched, locked up, and starved. Angela assures Silver that the Duchess ordered her to do this, and the lady confirms her words. At this time, the head maid thought that the Duchess herself had told her to do this, and therefore she thought that the mistress would take her side. And she does not understand why the mistress is doing this. Angela explains that she thought this was what the mistress wanted, since the Duchess had been gloomy since Bunny returned to the main palace. The Duchess says that she hopes the girl doesn't hate her for being her stepmother. The head maid says that Bunny dared to disturb a noble lady who never said a bad word to anyone, and she insulted the mistress without even knowing anything about her, and she is a fake who will be thrown out on the street one day. Angela claims that she worked hard to get to her current position, and she explains that she did it only for the mistress. The Duchess says she doesn't understand her and doesn't know where she heard such a rumor, and she asks if the woman really thought it was for her. The head maid explains that the mistress has clearly expressed her wishes. The lady asks if she is talking about Lily, because the child likes her so much that sometimes she makes up things that don't exist. The maid says that the mistress said that if she tries hard enough, she might get a promotion. The Duchess says she values her potential, but she doesn't see what that has to do with her terrible plan. Suddenly, the Duchess becomes ill and young. The master tells the maid that it is enough, and he screaming asks if there is anyone to take this mad woman. Silver orders the servants to lock the head maid in solitary confinement and not give her a drop of water for a week. Upon hearing this, the woman begs for mercy, Angela screaming that the Duchess herself said she was special, and that was why she chose her. The woman claims that she did all this for her mistress. Silver says that he doesn't even know why there are so many crazy people around his mother. However, the Duchess objects and suggests that he not say that, since the maid probably did not like Bunny, and she should have noticed it earlier. The young master claims that she is so kind to everyone that they have completely lost their fear, and says that she is no longer a saint. Silver claims that there is no need to pity the servants, and after that, he leaves. The Duchess sitting in the room thought that she was no longer a saint, and therefore she had more power in her hands, and she did not understand how her maid had been caught. At this point, Bunny is thinking that she got rid of the head maid and threw out the bait, and therefore she thinks that they are already caught. The Duchess enters the young lady's room and says that she thinks she has caused her inconvenience by coming without reason. When the main character saw the woman, she would never have thought that the Duke's wife would come to her. The woman tells her that she can lie down because she only came to see her face. The Duchess reports that she went to the temple and prayed for her speedy recovery. The girl looked at her and thought that the Duchess was a saint. Fluvia, the saint who saved the world from destruction. Before the empire was united, chaos reigned everywhere, and the mages were rampant. She, Saint Flavia, helped the Grand Duke Credel, who tried to seal the demonic beast block and suppress the plans of the mages. However, due to overuse of her power, she completely lost her divine gift and was abandoned by the temple. Her comrade Duke Credel, unable to bear it, made her a duchess as his second wife. Although the marriage was not for love, it was the reason she gained enough respect as the savior of the world. Of course, this is not the only reason, and soon after the era of chaos ended, Princess Ophelia was born from the Duke's first wife. The daughter of the Guardians born in an era of peace naturally became a symbol of peace. Accordingly, the few mages who managed to survive the chaos targeted her. Duke Credel needed Flavia to protect the daughter his beloved wife had abandoned. But despite having lost her divine power, Flavia was a saint and had considerable experience interacting with mages. But eventually, the magicians managed to put a curse on the peace symbol on the day Ophelia turned 7. At this time, the main character realizes that it was Fluvia who passed the curse directly to Bunny, because she is the only person who knows how to do it. The main character asks the Duchess what happened. However, the woman does not understand what she is talking about and asks her about it. The girl says that her hands are shaking. The Duchess explains that Angela came up to her and said something strange. However, she can't say it because her words were too terrible, and she was so shocked that she wanted to make sure she was okay. Bunny looked at her and thought that she seemed scared, but she knew it was all an act. The main character looked at the woman and saw her facial features. The forehead is dark, the eyebrows are thick and neat. The corners of the eyes are not too drooping and raised and slightly directed upwards. Large lips mean patience and virtue, and it seems that she is a lover of power and glory. The girl understands because her nose is high and straight. This means that she will enjoy wealth and honor, and truly a beautiful shell for a saint. The main character does not understand whether this means that she is an eternal saint who treats everyone equally and knows how to take care of the weak. After all, in Flavia's memories, she is exactly like that. She was the first of the Credel family to approach the despised and neglected Bunny. The young lady says that the maid insulted her and explains that she did nothing wrong. And she says that she threatened her because she began to irritate her and began to make mistakes like the 3. And after she pointed this out to her, the maid ran out. The girl says that since her father brought her to the main palace, she was recognized as his real daughter and asks if this is true. But when she said that she was going to see him about all of Angelina's deeds, she ran away. The Duchess says she understands, and the girl says she thinks she hit the nail on the head because the maid went straight to her. Bunny wonders what the maid did, and when she will be punished. She asks if she can go and see her. The saint says that the little girl should not think about such terrible things. The Duchess says that since the maid made a mistake by accident, and she can't do anything about it, her accusations are unfounded, and she suggests that the girl not do it again. The main character agrees with her, and at that time thought that if the maid was punished, she would look like a fool who fell for the blackmail of a little girl. And in any case, everyone will still think that Bunny is ignorant and indecent. The girl looked at the woman and thought, what is she really like? And she can't read her thoughts. After all, she doesn't understand if the Duchess is really a person with a pure soul, as everyone says. Bunny suggests that maybe she is the type of person that no one suspects, but who is actually behind everything that is happening. After all, it was Fluvia who suggested leaving Ophelia's maids in the castle, and the maid who was on the verge was the first to run to the Duchess, and also the transfer of Ophelia's curse directly to Bunny. The main character doesn't know how true her reasons are, but maybe because she was a pure person and believed that all people in the world are good and accidentally got involved in all this and ended up in this situation. The girl looked at Fluvia and thought that something was still bothering her, and she didn't understand what, after all, her eyes, which were shining with a bright, warm color like the sun. From the moment the saint came here, the pupils remained motionless and terrifyingly numb, like those of a dead fish. Bunny read a book about the saint, in which it was said that she came from a church orphanage, but there is no exact date and time of birth. And she understands that at this rate, she will not be able to make a prediction, since she has been looking for a long time. The girl understands that she has dug through the entire department, but has found nothing. After all, the imperial family tree. And if we take the Duke's family, they are also relatives. Now there is no place where the Criddle family does not look. In the north, where the mages who lost their powers were banished, and the demonic beast was sealed, the hero and his brother founded an empire. And this was the first empire of Abyss. Therefore, it can be said that the United Northern Kingdom was founded not by the current emperor, but by his younger brother, the Grand Duke Criddle. Because the current emperor could not have taken the throne without the military power, the family Criddle. And therefore, they are considered to have equal power. The main character understands that if she wants to escape from the Criddle family, or the entire empire, she needs to find a similar power, and it could be the next emperor or temple. Bunny's existence is Criddle's weak point, and if they find out about her, they can easily use this fact and control him. After all, this will lower the Duke's status and deprive the emperor of his power. The young lady understands that if she acts too rashly, she will become just a tool for them to use, and then she will find herself in an even more precarious position than she is now. And the girl thinks that she will see who can help her. The main character reflects on what she heard, that the emperor was a profligate and had many illegitimate children, the crown prince and 5 princesses, but none of them were fit to be heirs, Osobana prince. And Bunny realizes that she cannot count on their strength. And if this continues, the empire will fall. The girl understands that if they fail, then Duke Criddle, a famous hero, will step forward, and maybe he will turn everything upside down and make himself emperor. And then everything will definitely be over. Suddenly, the main character heard a voice that said that he remembered something, because today is his birthday. Bunny saw that she had hung the artifact on a chain, and then congratulated the guy on his birthday. And at that time, she thought that she would talk a little, and at the same time get her thoughts in order. The young lady thought that if she focused on studying the influential aristocratic families, she would be able to enter the temple. On the other end of the line, the guy is saying that there is no one on the entire continent who is not outraged by what happened 9 years ago. After all, he thinks it would be nice if at least one person remembered that he exists in this world. Hearing him, the girl thought that his voice was louder than last time, and she asks what happened 9 years ago. The guy says that many people died because of him, because he was born to start a war. Hearing this, the main character was surprised. For 9 years ago, on this day, a rare revelation occurred in the main hall. A dark-haired, black-eyed child of evil was born, causing a tragedy similar to that which occurred during the Great War. The Great War. This is the name of a period of chaos when sorcerers and witches were rampant and war engulfed the entire kingdom. Although it became the foundation for the founding of the empire, but the war also took many lives. The child of evil with dark hair and black eyes. And the main character does not understand why she remembered this now. The boy remembers that the boys teased him because of his dark hair like a witch and said that he does not scream even when he is hurt. After all, his mother is crazy and his son is a mute weirdo who does not even know who he is. The boy screamed that he will pay for your sins. Hearing this, Bunny asks if he is in the dump, The guy asks how she knew about it. However, he did not hear the answer. He thought that everything was bad, and she did not need to tell him about it. The girl asks if he often gets sick, and explains that she heard hoarseness in his voice, and thought that he was sick, and she will tell you where to get medicine. However, the guy does not understand what she is talking about, and asks her about it. Bunny explains that the road is quite difficult, and in such a way that he doesn't know if he can explain it in words. And if he can't find it, he suggests that he leave a message. The guy asks if she heard and says that he is the cause of the war. However, the girl asks if he heard her and says that it is not his fault. After all, he was just born and could not be the cause of the war. However, the guy says that the prophecy, and the main character asks if he knows the time when he was born. The stranger does not know why he should be interested in this, and the girl suggests that he tell her, and she will prove that his statements are absurd. Bonnie explains that the date of birth is determined by 4 pillars, and this hour is day, month, and year. After all, predictions are not bad or good, and each destiny is different in its own way. And just like appearance, it can change due to actions. The future of a person depends only on him. Hearing this, the black-haired guy says that she is so strange and reports that it is about 2 in the afternoon. The main character thought that he had just turned 9, and if you add up the year and date of birth, then the forecast turned out to be a rather unique case. The girl saw the result and thought that if he does not become an emperor, he will be a beggar. She reflects on the fact that his pillars define 4 sections: fire, water, metal, wood. And this means that gold or silver treasures will be countless. The absence of land means poverty, begging, and instability. With his outstanding abilities, skills, and intelligence, he has all the qualities of a great leader capable of attracting many followers. The emperor and the ground he stands on will shake under his might, but he will have to start from scratch. Since surviving is not enough, he must use this fragile, unstable ground as a support to change everything. The main character understands that if he does not bring benefit to the country, he will end his life as a beggar, either absolute power or poverty. The girl thought that if they were in her previous life, he would have a good job, for example, a prosecutor or a military man. But in this world, everyone blindly trusts the prophecy. However, Bunny doesn't understand how she can help him and how best to explain it to him. Suddenly, the guy tells her that there is no need to console him, and he does not understand why she is trying so hard for him. The guy claims that such things are no longer important. Hearing this, the girl asks why he is like this and why, and she wonders if it hurts him. The young man claims that even if it is not his fault, he does not understand that he will change, because the resentment will never leave him, and he is already broken. After all, everyone said that his birth brought chaos to this land. The black-haired boy says that this is his destiny, and when he thinks about their numerous victims, he sees no meaning in his life, and he no longer wants to wait for winter. The main character heard this and didn't understand what he was talking about, and thought that maybe he meant that he could freeze to death in the dump. Bunny remembers that when night came, she opened her eyes and looked carefully at the night sky. And in the night sky, the bright moon and countless stars seemed to be reaching down, and she found a small rabbit there. The girl remembers that she told the boy to find this rabbit when winter comes, and surprisingly, it will be very difficult. And she realized that he listened to her and waited. The main character says that she wants to ask him about something, and she suggests that he wait until winter and not listen to what others say, because it doesn't matter who started the war. The young lady tells him that the one who made this prophecy is important. After all, this person put him in danger by not caring about his future. Bunny reports that a 9-year-old boy is suffering from all sorts of bullying because of a prophecy that will never come true, and she asks if he thinks it's right. The girl reports that a prophecy on this day 9 years ago caused a tragedy similar to the Great War. However, she does not understand the true meaning of the birth of a dark-haired and black-eyed child. And then the main character explains that the meaning is this: after all, the people who suffered in the Great War should not blame the helpless child but the emperor and the temple. The main character claims that he did not send innocent people to their deaths, and people want to finish him off. She says that the guy is not the only victim here. The girl asks the guy if it's okay to die for them, so she suggests that he live until his last breath. Hearing this, the guy was surprised and asked if she wanted him to live. Then the girl replies that she wants him to live long and long. These words made the guy cry. The black-haired guy says that his name is Demian. Hearing this, the main character thought that, in the end, she had learned nothing useful except his name. After all, she understands that she had not planned to ask his name until the end. Bunny didn't mean to be friendly, but somehow she did. However, she understands that there are so many unhappy children here anyway, and it all reminds her of old times. The girl thought that it would be worthwhile to teach him other constellations, but she made him wait until winter in vain. After all, she told him where the medicine was, but she did not tell him how to find it. The main character knows that the winter is too cold, and she worries whether he will be able to survive it. And more importantly, whether this child will be able to withstand his cruel fate. Bunny suggests that it might just be a coincidence, but the combination of his day and time of birth meant the flame of the sun, fire, which is the basis of life in the sky. It illuminates everything, driving away darkness. On Earth, it embraces all beings with warmth and saves the world, illuminating with warm light the Earth frozen over the winter. The spring sun melts the snow and announces a new beginning. And at that time, the main character thought that they had good compatibility. However, she does not understand that the one who was blamed for such a terrible tragedy can become an emperor. The girl understands that even the current rulers achieved their positions through numerous sacrifices during the troubled times. Bunny reflects on the fact that naturally being an emperor is not so easy, because his whole life he will be surrounded by blood and death, and everything is very unpredictable, and you can't trust almost anyone. The main character thought about what if she became such a person for him, and she would be a dense forest for him. The girl thought that even if he had only a small spark left, he would be able to light it in his forest, turning it into a big fire. Bunny realizes that their fates are similar, and they can unite to help each other in difficult situations. After leaving the Duke's room, the main character thought that they couldn't rely on the imperial family. She thought that she had enough of wasting her nerves and needed to come to her senses and deal with her difficult fate. The young lady reflects on the fact that, first of all, she must decide which side to take in order to save herself. Suddenly, her thoughts are interrupted by Angelus, who asks why she is coming down from the office. He asks the girl if she is up to something again. The lady explains that she was studying alone. The guy hears this and asks what she was doing there alone. The young lady replies that she read the genealogy, since she knows nothing about the Criddle family. Hearing this, the young gentleman asks about the fact that the elder brother has not yet hired a tutor for her. And at this time, the girl thought that there is a high probability that he will turn out to be a chatterbox. Since Angelus is the next contender for the throne for charlatans, he remains a tasty morsel. The girl reports that he said she should wait a month until she recovers. After all, after exhaustion, the doctor said she should rest. The young gentleman heard this and said that she had lived for 2 years in the mansion of the Grand Duke and had developed the exhaustion that the poor suffer from, and asked her about it. And the girl confirmed his words. Angelus looks at Bunny and asks if she is retarded. Hearing this, the girl does not understand what he is talking about. The guy claims that she gave all the food ordered for her to the servants and asks if this is true. The girl replies that it is true, and he claims that she is deliberately resisting him. The main character explains that after being exhausted, it is impossible to eat such fatty food, and the guy says that this happens when you try to eat with soil. And she says that it is all because of the weeds. The young gentleman claims that she greedily threw herself upon those poisonous weeds, and now she claims that she could not eat what he gave her. Bunny answers that her body only accepts poisonous herbs, and she does not understand why he looks at her so intently. Hearing this, the guy asks what kind of nonsense she is talking. The main character does not understand why he is like this, and it is clear without fortune-telling that he is full of anger. Angelus screams, asking if she has lost her taste from eating garbage from the dump, and he claims that if it is not slop, then she will have no appetite, and asks about it. The main character says that she tried to scavenge from the dump and steal dog food and tear off and eat tree bark, and therefore he is right. The young gentleman asks why she does not respect him. The heroine heard this, smiled, and thought that it was because he was a young aristocrat who flaunted his fastidiousness, and she asks if he had ever fasted for 15 days. And at that time, the girl thought that he really knew nothing about Bunny's life and had no interest at all, because it's quite natural at the dump. And when you're hungry, there's not a single thought left in your head, except the desire to eat some things. Bunny asks if it's hard for him to imagine that all the people there live exactly like that. Hearing this, the guy asks what kind of nonsense she's talking about. The main character explains that she couldn't do it anyway, considering what happened to the Criddle family, and so she thought it was good that she decided to do it. After all, 10 years have passed since the end of the war, and it is a time of peace. War is something special because the person she was talking to yesterday becomes her enemy today. The girl reports that compared to this rag soup is an expensive and tasty dish, and she will be grateful for this too. And at that time, the girl thought that she should always think so. The young lady reflects on how no matter how painful it may be, compared to the time spent at the dump, this place is heaven on earth. Angelus утверждает, какой бы she had not lived life before. But now she is a princess, and he asks if she thinks it is reasonable to speak, and she is undernourished now. And so she lost her money, and like a fool gave out food to everyone. The lady asks if it really matters to him, and explains that she thought it didn't matter, and the real Bunny isn't here now, and she doesn't see the need to question her. The young gentleman claims that he has business, and if she decides to do something, she must first tell him about it. The girl asks if he would listen to her. The young lady claims that he never showed any interest in what she ate, what she wore, or how she felt, because she believed that she was treated this way because no one cared about her. The main character says that she sees that he was worried when she said that she was sick and not eating enough, but there was no need for that. And at that time, the girl thought that Angelus was like that because he wanted to torture her. But no, because it's a petty feeling of remorse, and Duke Criddle must have taught him justice to show compassion to the weak and always lend a helping hand to those in need. The young lady reports that she does not reproach him, and as he knows she has nothing and will remain so until the end of her days. Hearing this, Angelus asks what she wants, and he claims that she is now a princess, and he reminds her that he said to give her everything. However, the girl objects and says that she, after all, who gave birth with nothing, and except the title of a false princess, has nothing, and she understands that here her greed will be limitless. And at that time, the lady thought that if it were the real Bunny, she would boldly grab his hand, and overcome with guilt, she would hope to enter the family circle. However, the main character thought that this time everything would be different. After all, she would desperately accept the sympathy shown to her from time to time and return the health and energy corresponding to her age. However, the girl does not understand what will happen next, and suddenly many will think that she is Ophelia and will follow her. The young lady looked at the boy and thought about what he could do to the one who was undermining his younger sister's position. And she says that if she puts her hopes on his mercy, they may be dashed once again. Bunny claims that she doesn't think she'll ever be able to stand as confidently as she does now. And so she says whatever she does and suggests that he ignore it just like before, and not do anything he hasn't done before. The main character says that as he said it is true. After all, her health condition is not that of a princess. However, she will recover quickly and says that there is nothing to worry about. And after these words, the girl leaves. But suddenly, the young gentleman, screaming, asks where she went, and he grabs her hand and says that he is not finished yet. Angela says in surprise that if he had not grabbed her, and at that time, the girl thought about what he decided to kill her, and she understands that there is a limit to everything, and she turns to the young gentleman and suggests that he should be more careful in the future. He explains that it is because she suddenly began to leave. The main character asks the guy if he knows what will happen if he gets too close to a girl, and she says that if he meets the wrong one, he could ruin his destiny, and then she pushes him away and leaves. Angelus asks the girl if she has gone crazy. After all, she says some crazy things, and he does not understand whether he can suffer because of some girl. The maids who were cleaning were talking about the Duke's son threatening the princess. The maid says that everything is true because Grandpa Tom the gardener also saw this scene from the window, and that because of her illness, she was kept in a remote place for several years. The maid says that even now the princess lives practically alone. The cook says that everything is true, even though the illness has receded. She eats separately, and no one even comes to her. But this is all because the Grand Duke and his sons are busy. Maid Ruby asks if it is because the Grand Duchess died giving birth to the princess, and she heard that the Duke loved his first wife very much. Another maid says that they should be quiet and watch their language because Mistress Fluvia will not like it. The maid asks what's wrong. She said that since the eldest of them, who fawned on the mistress, is no longer there. Reuben asks if they mean to say that, because of the princess, her true nature was revealed, and they say that she pretended to be someone else. The other maid says that it is true, and besides, it was the princess who revealed the sins of Melissa, Sarah, and Emma. The dark-haired maid says that it served the head maid right, and she can't even count how many slaps she got from her. And the other maid says that she gave her a bucket with a hole in the bottom and told her to go get some water. The maid says she's thinking about the money Melissa stole from her, and her friend asks if she's complaining to the one who lost 4 months' pay because of Sarah. The red-haired maid asks if she really is a symbol of calm, because serenity comes as soon as she enters the main palace, and her partner asks if she thinks the princess is a saint. A maid who has been working in this palace for many years says that after the mistress lost her sacred power, another saint has not yet appeared. Candace the maid tells them to stop talking and not to allow them to discuss the people they serve. And she asks what kind of frivolity it is to speak like that. Hearing this, the maid says that she is so correct, and they understand that if the butler notices, there will be serious problems, and they need to be more careful. Maid Candace. At this time, she thought that everyone was talking too much. The symbol of peace is holy, and if such rumors spread, it will burden the princess even more, because she is still a child who is already weak. And the maid Candace remembers the young mistress, who said that she would be happy to remember her name, and she thinks about how it is true that everyone ignores her, and she thinks about how sorry she is for this lady. At this time, the main character reflects on the fact that thanks to the work done, she understood something, because she thought that Bunny herself was to blame for the way she was treated by 3 of Ophelia's maids, the head maid Angela and the Grand Duchess. The girl realizes that there is an internal enemy that has been trying to isolate Bunny, and nothing will work if she just sits quietly. The lady realizes that it is not enough to simply threaten the members of the Cridell family, and if she remains in enemy territory, she needs a supporter. The main character understands that even if she ever stops being Ophelia, she needs to find a person who will follow her to the end. Bunny looked at Candace and thought that this maid is a loner, and she is strong in front of the strong and weak in front of the weak. This woman knows how to keep faith, and duty does not tolerate injustice. The girl reflects on the fact that the head maid disliked Candace because of her honest character. But now she may not even dream of a promotion. The young mistress asks Candace what she usually does. The maid answers that she works in the laundry. And at that moment, the lady thought that she was doing menial work that did not correspond to her experience. The main character looked at her and thought that she was like a pearl in the mud, and if she had the desire to get out of the swamp, then she would be happy to enlist her support. The lady asks if she has a family, and if she has brothers and sisters. The maid replies that she has parents and 2 younger brothers. Bunny looked at her and thought that her eyebrows looked like they were about to disappear. And that was because, in a minor case, discord due to a quarrel with brothers, and in the worst case, conflict could end in a break in ties, or even death. The main character thought about trying to guess, and asks the maid if her brother is sick with something, or maybe they were separated in childhood, or her mother had an abortion. Hearing this, the girl does not understand why the mistress is asking about such a thing, and she assumes that all this is because of her family, because she is poorly healthy and distant from them. But the maid objects and says that everyone is healthy and she is not separated from anyone in the family. The young mistress asks when her younger brother's birthdays are, and asks her to tell her the time of their birth. Oh, the maid answers that the second was born on the 23rd of August, the second year of the abyss at 3 o'clock, and the third on the 5th year of the abyss. The lady asks if the younger one is listening well. However, the maid said nothing, and she says that she understands that her brother is quite a prankster, and to thank the woman for telling her. Bunny says that it definitely concerns eyebrows. After all, fortune-telling says that an accident will happen to the younger brother, since the constellation of Gemini is in the minus. And perhaps he will fall for the trick, but the probability of this is already high, because he is a child. And at this time, the main character does not understand how to say it more naturally. The maid Candace says that she wants to ask her something, and perhaps it is not on topic. After all, not all families are in harmony. The maid explains that her mother had a big fight with her brother over an abortion and cut off ties. And she says that there are a lot of people working here who don't keep in touch with their families. And that doesn't mean that they're all unhappy. After all, they get married, start new families, make friends who they can trust with secrets. Candace explains that she means that if her family makes her feel sad and lonely, then later she will meet friends with whom she can have fun. Hearing this, the main character laughed and asked what she was saying. And at that moment, she thought that she was lonely. And no matter how hard the Craddells tried to hide their attitude towards her, rumors still spread. Bunny remembers what Angelus did in the hallway, and it happened because he doesn't control his behavior. And these aristocrats who constantly forget that services also have eyes. The young lady thanks the girl for her concern and says that as she thought Candace is very kind. Hearing this, the maid objects and says that she is wrong. And at this time, the main character thought that she is weak in front of the weak. The maid thanks for understanding, despite the fact that she was rude. Bunny invites the maid to come closer and says that she has been kind to her, and therefore she will tell her something. The young lady whispers in her ear that a child named Joey cannot swim, and for 15 days Joey had better stay away from the riverbank. Well, since he is a mischievous boy, he will most likely disobey and ask if she is telling the truth. The lady explains that during this time, wherever he goes, let someone accompany him. It would be good if he were an adult, but a child with a strong constitution would do. And the main thing is that he swims well enough to be able to pull out a person who has fallen into the water. Candace looked at him in surprise and asked if the young lady meant to say that Joey would fall into the water and something bad would happen. Bunny replies that there is nothing wrong with being careful. The surprised maid says that she does not know why she says such things, and the main character thought that there is no concept of fortune-telling in this place, and if she tells more, nothing good will happen. After all, she understands that she only gave advice, and it is not her business to decide whether to believe or not. The young mistress orders that in any case, he should not be allowed near water for 15 days. Leaving the lady's room, the maid thought that she seemed to have seen the future. Candace thinks that this can't be, because these are all just legends, stories about oracles, and she wondered if her princess could have deceived her. The maid suggests that perhaps the young mistress is simply carrying and taking because of illness. However, she understands that it is not that difficult, and all that needs to be done is to give a few coins to look after him, because she does not know what else this rascal can do. Candace enters the young lady's room and falls to her knees, reporting that she saved her younger brother's life. The maid understands that if the princess had not given her advice, but if she had ignored it, then a great disaster could have happened. She does not understand how the lady could have found out about this, because she knows that the powers of the Creedle family do not manifest until the age of 14, but now it is not important. The maid asks how she can repay her. The young mistress suggests that she not kneel down as if she had committed some crime. Candle says that even though she saved her brother, she has nothing to give. The lady asks why there is nothing to give and offers to be her personal maid. At this time, the maid thought that all she had to do was be a loyal servant and follow orders. The lady claims that she remembers that she was the only one who supported her when the head maid was being rude. Candle says she just did what she had to do. Bunny says she likes it, that she takes it for granted, because it's natural for hers. The main character looked at the maid and thought that in any case she was a good person. And despite the fact that the senior maid punished her every time she remains the same, after all, she simply agrees with her and moves on. Banya understands that Candel is a woman with a good character, since she does not ask for anything in return, and does not boast and behaves as if it is natural. The young lady asks the maid if her brother is okay. After all, the weather was cold, and he fell into the water. The maid replies that her brother has caught a cold, but he is healthy and young, and so he will soon recover and be as good as new, and she should not worry about it. Bunny says that she never knows for sure, so she will tell the butler to send a doctor. Hearing this, Candace says that the princess does not need to do such a thing for a mere servant. However, the young mistress objects and says that she is not just a servant, but now her devoted maid. And even though she is stuck in her room, she can still ask the butler for such a thing, and suggests that she just accept it. Candace looked at the young princess and thought about how she would follow her for the rest of her life. When the young mistress and the maid were leaving the room, they knocked over the red-haired maid when they opened the door. Bunny asks if she was eavesdropping on them. Then he asks if she is hurt. The red-haired girl looked at the princess and said that it was the first time she had treated her so kindly. Candace heard this screaming, asking how she can behave like this. And at this time, the red-haired maid rises from the floor and quickly runs away. Both the young and the mistress offer to leave her. Candace claims that this is ridiculous, and she can't believe that Ruby was eavesdropping on a conversation coming from the princess's personal space. However, she doesn't understand how she can be let go and suggests that she is a spy. Hearing this, Bunny tells her to calm down. However, the maid assures her that this cannot be justified, and even though she is curious, she must keep herself in check because there is already a lot of gossip about the young lady. Candace explains that it's not about whether she likes her or not. And at that moment, Bunny thought about how, even though they are complete opposites, they complement each other perfectly. The main character reflects on the fact that Candace has great potential, but she quietly does her job, not wanting to move on. And Reuben, with endless curiosity and sparkling energy, will find hidden and dirty pearls and make them so. Bunny suggests that the maid take a closer look at her because she is a very sweet girl and sparkles like a gem, and everyone is unique in their own way. She explains that she is the type of person who treats everyone generously. The young lady explains that in any case, Ruby is not just a frivolous girl. She is a beautiful candle that burns itself and makes everyone around her glow. The main character explains that Ruby is the kind of person who can leave everyone for the sake of her loved ones. And she says that Candace is made of solid iron and is weak to fire. But Ruby's flame will be able to melt her with its warmth and turn her into a beautiful sword. Opening the door to the study room, where only family members can enter the young mistress, suggests that the maid treat the red-haired maid well, since she is quite sensitive. When the maid was left alone, she thought that the young lady was a fairy. After some time, Candace returned to her job and is asked by the maids if it is true that the princess saved her brother's life and even sent a doctor to him. They say that Ruby told them and said that the princess personally took care of her. Hearing this, the maid thought about what the princess had said, that if you looked closely at Ruby, she would turn out to be very cute. But no matter how much you looked, you couldn't understand what she was talking about. Candace thought that Ruby was a fool who only knew how to talk, and even when she was dying, she would blab everything and everyone. And she didn't understand why. Why not keep quiet, but go and tell everyone? Walking down the corridor, the maid saw two ladies, and then greeted the Duchess of Marcel, who was the godmother, the mother of the Credel children, and the future guardian of Ophelia. And also with her was Baroness Garnet, the maid of honor of the Duchess of Marcel. Candace doesn't understand why the Duchess suddenly came. After all, since Fluvia appeared, she almost stopped visiting the Duke's residence. The maid of honor looked at her and said that she is not even capable of doing ordinary things, and she even calls herself a maid. The woman in the green dress asks if she is Princess Ophelia's maid. And if so, let her tell the princess that Duchess Marcel asks for a meeting, and she says that they will wait for her in the living room. Candace says that at the risk of sounding rude, she asks if she can say something. The maid says that the princess has been through a hard time and has not yet fully recovered both physically and mentally. And she believes that it is her duty to cut off everything that disturbs the princess's mind and body. Hearing this, the lady-in-waiting laughs and asks why she is so protective of her, and claims that the princess decides who to meet. Not her Garnet asks if this is what her mentor taught her. Suddenly, the Duchess says that her lady-in-waiting has stopped, and she explains that it was she who was rude, not warning in advance. And she looks at the maid and bids her raise her head. Baroness Marcel smiles and says that the princess has a faithful maid, and they say that she saved her younger brother from death. And so she is just wondering if her son has a chance. Suddenly, Silver appears in the hallway and asks why the godmother has arrived unannounced. The Baroness explains that she came after hearing that her goddaughter had recovered and returned home. Marcel claims that she was in too much of a hurry to hear the good news and therefore did not inform them, and then asks for forgiveness for her impudence. Silver thanks the Baroness for her kind words and says that unfortunately, Ophelia is currently unable to greet guests. The young gentleman asks why he should not refuse the honor and serve her. The Baroness says that she cannot take up his precious time and asks if he could take her to the Duchess. Marcel explains that they haven't seen each other for a long time, and so they could have a cup of tea. Candace thought that she thought the gentleman was unhappy with this visit. However, she still needed to find the princess and report the breakthrough to the Duchess. When the maid opened the door, she saw that Reuben was in the mistress's room. The young lady explains that she had already heard that the Baroness had arrived, because Ruby had told her so. Hearing this, the maid thought that this servant had come faster than the wind. Bunny says that it's been a long time since she last spoke to Madame Marcel, and that's why she's not remembered well, and says that Ruby told her about her, and that's why she suggests that the maid not be so cruel to her. The main character invites the red-haired maid to continue talking, and Ruby says that Madame Marcel is the godmother of her and her young masters. The maid explains that when the young lady was born, the Grand Duke was fighting a demonic beast. He asked Marcel to take care of the children if anything went wrong, and his trust in her was so great that he was willing to ask for such a thing. Ruby reports that Marcel's family is said to have been very loyal to him since the founding of the empire. It is also said that Madame was close to his late wife and was raised as her sister. At this time, Baroness Marcel and the Duchess are drinking tea in her room, and the lady thanks the Duchess for making time for her. Fluvia suggests that the young lady not worry about it because it is her duty to serve the guests who visit the mansion, but she claims that she, on the contrary, has not prepared for her visit. Baroness Marcel replies that it was not necessary, but thanks for her understanding. She says that she does not like tea unless it is prepared by her servants, and the older she gets, the more picky she becomes. The Baroness insists that hospitality to guests is the most important thing, and asks if she is not pushing herself too hard. Marcel reports that she heard that the lady fell ill because she let some mongrel into the mansion. Hearing this, Lady Fluvia's maid of honor thought about what she was applying, meaning the maid, and hinting that Lady Fluvia was from the orphanage. And in fact, it seemed like she hated Madame Saint. At this time, in the room of the young mistress, Candace, screaming, addressing Ruby, says that if she continues to chatter about such things, she will get angry. The girl justifies herself and says that the lady is just curious. The young mistress invites the red-haired maid to continue talking, and she explains that Madame Marcel was categorically against the marriage between the Duke and Madame Fluvia. However, after Madame Fluvia began living in the mansion, they practically stopped communicating. The maid says that Marcel valued her friendship with Eleanor very much and was upset by the Duke's decision. At this point, Lady Fluvia announces that she is well aware that her position is much lower than that of the deceased wife of the Grand Duke, and it is not surprising that she does not like it. Hearing this, the Baroness asks how she dares to question his lordship's choice. Mrs. Marcel says that until now, she could not interfere in the family's affairs, and it must have been difficult for Fluvia to take on the role of mistress of such a large family as the Cradels, and especially since she entered it without knowing anything. Baroness Marcel announces that she will select several maids and send them to them. She explains that they are reliable and have solid experience, and to some extent they will be able to compensate for the shortage of servants. Mrs. Fluvia thanks for her concern, and the Baroness replies that there is no need for thanks since she must be busy preparing for the next meeting in Lilia. Credel's wife says that she did not expect Madame Marcel to be interested in such a small gathering. However, the Baroness replies that the meeting is being arranged by the Grand Duchess. At this time, Reuben informs the young lady that there was a story that Madame Marcel was an influential person in society and was blocking Madame Fluvia's public affairs activities. Hearing this, the main character thought that they were feuding, and the maid says that in any case, she always sent gifts to her godchildren on their birthdays. At this time, Candy remembers that Madame Marcel came here because of her son. The red-haired maid says that she heard that the Baroness has a son who is sick, and maybe because of this, she decided to visit her, because she saved Candace's brother, and therefore the Baroness has hopes for the young mistress. Bunny thought about the destiny of Marcel's child that she saw in the family tree. The main character reflects on the fact that if there is a lot of water in the riverbed, the earth will become muddy and wash away. The earth symbolizes the skin, so you need to be careful with skin diseases. Fire energy is also weakened by water. When it comes to it, the heart becomes weaker, and the eyes can go blind. And Bunny does not understand whether he is so sick that the Duchess came running to her, having heard only rumors. The main character thought that she could do nothing with her child. At this time, Madame Marcel asks the Grand Duchess how the young lady's training is progressing, and she wonders if they don't have anyone for the position of etiquette teacher. She can recommend a lady she knows, or she can teach her herself. Fluvia says that, unfortunately, Viscount Leiden is already training her. At this time, the maid of honor whispered to the Baroness who this man was, and upon hearing this, Marcel says that this is quite unexpected for her, because she says that she heard that he has no shortcomings in his knowledge of etiquette. Baroness Marcel asks if they have entrusted the princess's education to someone who has bought his title, and she says she finds it a little difficult to understand the decision. Hearing this, the lady's maid thought that it was because Bunny was a fake princess. She does not understand what Madame Fluvia will do. The Grand Duchess explains that there is nothing to understand, and the Baroness says that she does not understand. Fluvia explains that Viscount Leiden is very educated, and he is the best person to teach Princess Ophelia at this time. The Grand Duchess claims that she should not worry about it, because they have no difficulties, because the problem that worries the Duchess of Marcel does not exist. And this is nonsense. Baroness Marcel is accompanied by young Mr. Silver when she leaves the mansion. He looks at her and asks if his godmother is okay. The Baroness explains that she always feels dizzy after talking to her, but she thinks she said something that would upset her. Baroness Marcel suggests that maybe it's because she's a person who doesn't give anything, and she doesn't like that. The woman claims that she lacks humanity. Silver suggests to his godmother not to be so angry with his mother. On hearing this, the Baroness asks if he is talking about the Grand Duchess, and she claims that this woman is the Duchess, not his mother. The guest claims that she is his mother, Eleanor, who was a close friend to hers. Suddenly, the Baroness heard the young mistress's maid calling her. The maid reported that the princess had asked her to give Madame a letter. At this point, Bunny thought about how they say that the enemy of his enemy is her friend, and that's why she can't make a sick person feel better. Marcel, sitting in the carriage, thought that she had seen Ophelia only once, and she was little and did not even remember her face. And then she reads the letter, which says that the young lady greets her. The woman reads that the letter states that the young lady almost never wrote letters, and therefore may make some mistakes, and therefore asks for patience and understanding. The letter says that it must be that she came after hearing the rumors, but she can't cure the sick person. After reading this, the Baroness thought that it was clear to her, and she did not understand why she had expected anything else. The main character wrote in the letter that her son was born with poor health, so it may be difficult for him to live a long life. But in any case, this does not mean that one should lose hope. Betty writes in her letter that her son, although physically weak, will live longer than his lady. However, this does not mean that Madame will die soon. Since all separations are sad, what can be more painful than to experience the death of your own child? The young lady writes in her letter that in the end, she does not want the Baroness to worry so much, and suggests that she think about it. After all, when something is lost, something new is acquired. And of course, this is kindness. When the young lady wrote the letter, she thought that her son had a tendency to get sick, but his body was still much weaker than others. And she understands that a weak body does not mean kindness, and his personal qualities like his illness are maximized. Personality is a heart that loves the boundless. Betty understands that her son Marcel grew up smart, wise, and honest, thanks to his mother. And with his attentiveness to other people, he is quite popular. The girl writes that good deeds done from the heart bring good luck, and she asks if Madame ever wondered why he was born with such poor health. The main character writes that if he doesn't know how to wield a sword, then the strongest knight can teach him. And they say that every person is born with a different light, and the fact that he was born different from other people does not mean that his light is dimmer. The young lady writes in a letter that this glow is simply different from the others. Baroness Marcel, having read the letter, smiled because she could not even imagine that Ophelia would write such kind words. The lady-in-waiting asks Madame why she is crying. The woman replies that Ophelia has grown so much since their last meeting. However, she is patiently waiting for her meeting with Knox. the main character heard the young master calling her. And hearing this, she was surprised, and thought that the recovery period appointed by Angelus was over, and she lost track of time after arriving here. The girl looked out the window and thought that winter had come to the Empire abruptly and hit hard. The main character remembers that she hasn't received any messages since then, and she wonders if he's okay. Then she touches her artifact, which she had hung around her neck. The young lady understands that the conversation with Demian could be long, and now is not the right time for it. Walking down the hallway, the girl realizes that it is dangerous to own such an expensive artifact in a dump, and she thinks he will have to hide it carefully. Betty knows that since he told her his name, he will definitely call if anything happens, and she knows that she has to stay in touch no matter what. When the main character entered Angelus's office, she thought that she was seeing this office for the first time, and this is the next room after the conference room. And she remembers that they say that the young gentleman is a workaholic, but he is only 14 years old, and she does not understand why he is in such a hurry to grow up. Betty remembered that the young master had been confirmed as the successor. When the main character entered the office, Angelus said that he advised her to be more careful and gave her time to adapt. The young gentleman looks at the girl and says that she couldn't sit still. Hearing this, the lady thought that she hoped he would continue to work and would succumb to exhaustion. However, the guy claims that he never gave her the right to violate the order of the main palace, and therefore suggests that the girl no longer act rashly. Hearing this, the main character thought that the order in the palace that now this chaos is called. So Angelus asks what kind of letter she sent to Madame Marcel. Bunny replies that nothing like that. After all, Madame said that she was uneasy. Here she wrote a few words of support. Hearing this, the young gentleman crying out says that she did not come to her for this, and he asks how everyone came to believe that she is the next saint. The main character thought that she hadn't done anything special, but the rumor had spread in a couple of days, and that meant that the rotten little people had destroyed the existing order. The young lady thought that she had let the gossip fly, but there was nothing wrong with that to enhance her reputation. And she told the gentleman that she did not even know why it happened. Angelus claims that he will watch, and if Ophelia's reputation suffers even a little, she will go back to the tower. Hearing this, the girl thinks that his words are truly frightening, and she agrees with him. The young master says that if Mother hears about these rumors, her heart will be broken, and he understands that usually the divine power is passed on to the next generation only after death. And he asks, did she not think that the rumor about the lost power would surface every time people saw her? Hearing this, the main character looked at the guy and thought that he was not upset, but simply trying to isolate the innocent bunny. And the reason he brought this up was because of the Grand Duchess, because Bunny is the villain and Fluvia is the victim. And in the eyes of the Kreddle family, she is a brave hero. The young lady apologizes and says that she did not think about it, and therefore asks the servants to stop chatting. And at that time, she thought that if she told them about the suspicious behavior of the Duchess, they would not believe her because there is simply no evidence. Angelus tells her that it's not her fault. Hearing this, the girl thinks that they were keeping Bunny and didn't even know it. But the young master claims that if the rumors spread outside the palace, people might try to contact them, and then his sister would be in danger. At this time, the main character thought that they were the biggest danger, and if Bunny's identity was revealed, it would be a huge problem. The girl wonders if it might be because of her reputation as a saint, but she is glad she let the rumors spread, as it provokes the Duchess. The main character understands that if this awakens a conflict between the temple and the family, Kreddle, then it will be the icing on the cake. The name of the youngest daughter of the symbol of peace will be cursed, since they brought a child to take the place of the saint, and she does not understand whether the temple will forgive the Grand Duchess for this. Bunny thought it would be great if the temple would take care of the Kreddle family. And at that moment, the young master suddenly takes her by the shoulders and asks her to concentrate, and he says that it is not just like that, because she can be condemned even for accepting the curse. Angelus asks her if she wants to be in a noose. The girl looks at his very serious face and answers that, of course, she doesn't want that. The young master says that he hopes the girl has understood and informs her that classes will begin soon. And he explains that since she now lives in the main palace, she must practice all the skills of a young lady perfectly and therefore must attend these classes. Bunny doesn't understand why the young master warned her. In the past, he would have simply scolded her, and that was it. And she wonders why he turned his hypocrisy on Bunny. And the girl understands that it is not so bad, and even so unpleasant. The main character reflects on the fact that in any case, Angelus himself admitted that the behavior of the Archduke's wife was caused by his loss of her divine power, and she does not understand how to move forward without manipulation. The young lady saw the man and does not understand who he is. And the contents of the book are radically different from what Bunny was taught by her mentor. However, it must be one of two things. Either he is inexperienced, or he deliberately distorted the knowledge. The girl recalls that the teacher said that he would first study the book himself, and once he understood everything well, he would read it to her. The teacher says he is Viscount Leiden, and he didn't expect the girl to return. The main character recalls that 2 years ago, he was responsible for Bunny's education. Normally, the education of an aristocrat's child is entrusted to a lady of high social standing. But who would agree to educate a pauper like her? It was the Viscount who was responsible for Bunny when the Grand Duke needed help. Viscount Leiden. He came from a peasant family, but at a time when mages were raging everywhere, he sold supplies to the needy, and then bought a title with the money. Viscount on, example of a self-made man. And so he was able to become a teacher, despite the fact that he did not belong to the aristocracy. He had impeccable knowledge of etiquette and culture, and he thought that teaching Bunny would help him rise even higher. But he was very wrong about that. While sitting in class, Bunny wonders if she can do something specific. The teacher explains that to win someone's favor, she needs to show what she's good at. And to do that, she first has to try changing the tone of her voice and her behavior. The Viscount asks the girl to think about who her relatives like the most. The girl replies that she knows such a person, and it is Ophelia. The main character recalls that at first, he only explained the basics which everyone could understand, and did not go into the essence. A frustrated Bunny says it's no use and explains that they hate her. He explains that it's because they're not alike, and that's why he thinks she feels rejected. The girl asks the teacher what she needs to do to become like Ophelia, and he answers that first, she needs to change her outfit. Hearing this, Bunny claims that she has no money and does not know what kind of clothes Ophelia preferred to wear. The Viscount wonders if there are any clothes left in her room, and asks if she can go and see. However, the girl claims that her room is in the main building, which is the reason why Bunny was so reluctant to steal. The teacher says that he saw a strange book in the main library, and it talked about changing fate. Hearing this, the girl asks where it is. He explains that you are in the corner of the library and at the very end of the row, and he thinks that there are many, many more interesting books there. At this point, the main character realizes that no one will listen to what Bunny went through. Since Viscount Leiden didn't put his hands on it, he just encouraged her to act. The main character thought that even if she uncovered his plans and exposed him, he would find a loophole and escape. The young lady realizes that in the eyes of others, he must seem like a patient teacher who cares for difficult children. And then she says that she is also pleased to see him. The teacher reports that he was worried because he heard she had had a hard time, and so he is glad to see her well. He states that the young lady is still as sweet as ever. Hearing this, the lady thought that no doubt she still looked stupid, but he must have heard that the headmaid had been replaced, but Bunny was still being ignored. The main character remembers that the teacher has already succeeded in something because he tricked Bunny into causing an accident, so this is not at all surprising. The girl realizes that in the long run, it was actually slightly more profitable for him to educate her than to deceive her, because once she had gained his trust, Bunny would never forget his help, even if she took on the role of a real daughter. The main character understands that the Viscount is a man so wise that he profited from the war and became an aristocrat. He chose not to use Bunny, but to set her up. After all, she is a person with real power. At this time, the young lady asks if he will teach her again. Hearing this, the teacher asks if she thinks he is not worthy of it. However, the girl assures him that this is not the case at all, and says that she would really like this. Milady reports that immediately after she returned to the main mansion, she checked his date of birth. Hearing this, he was surprised, and she explains that she really wanted to give him a gift as a token of gratitude. And at that time, The girl thought that she knew that he was going to join in the manipulation of the Duchess. The young lady smiles and suggests that he look forward to it. The teacher asks the girl to finish reading and begin etiquette lessons. He claims that ladies are still bad at writing, and he will interpret. He asks what the girl would do if she met someone at an event who knew her but had not yet introduced herself to him. The lady says she doesn't know, but she'll wait until he says hello, and the teacher says she's right, and he explains that it's not allowed to greet someone who's higher in status than her. The Viscount explains that most of them are of lower status than Milady, and so she will have to wait for another person to speak to her. The one with the higher rank should not speak first. Hearing this, the girl thought that if she did this, people would criticize her for ignoring her. They might also judge her for being too modest. The teacher says that she should be a leader, not a follower, and a modest outfit will serve as an indicator for people from rich circles. At this time, the girl thought that she does not understand what it means to be modest, because the book says that dressing like this is basic politeness. The main character looked at the teacher and thought that nothing had changed. After all, even Bunny, who came from the dump, would not be able to understand this nonsense. The young lady became bored in class and wondered if the teacher would listen to himself from the outside. The Viscount turns to the girl and says that that's all for today. Hearing this, the lady's very happy. The teacher informs that they will see each other tomorrow and suggests to the girl, "Don't forget to review the study before going to bed." The main character looked at the teacher and thought that he had evil snake eyes that were quite small and showed a lot of white, a narrow jaw, and bones that stuck out a lot. And there were a lot of small scars and acne on his face. The girl thought that she had never met such an unlucky person, even in her previous life, and luck must be passing him by, and he is a loser. A teacher is a person who has the right thoughts, positive beliefs, and is aware of what he lacks and tries to fill it. He does the right things with a clear mind, lives without a goal, and does not demand anything from others. However, the main character understands that he should stay away from people who are trying to benefit from him because he can become infected with bad energy, and she understands that everything fits together because he deftly handles his bad luck. A week later, the main character thought that she had finally passed another idiotic lesson, and then the girl asks the maid if she brought her flowers, and then she took them and ran into the hall to her mother, where Lilia's meeting was held, and says that she picked her flowers. At this time, the main character thought that she needed to show the results of today's lesson. The surprised Duchess thanks the girl, and after that, she turns to the other ladies and greets them. The main character says that her name is Ophelia Cradell, and at this time, she remembers that she is not allowed to greet someone who is higher in status than her. The girl understands that despite the fact that Ophelia is the direct heir of the Duke, she is only their daughter, and her status is much lower than that of these ladies, and she must respect adults and behave modestly in front of them. The main character thought that she was just doing what the Viscount had taught her, and she turned to the lady and said that this was the first time she had met noble ladies, and that she was very happy. A strange lady approaches a girl and tells her that she has heard a lot about her and is very glad to see her in person. The young lady looks at her and thinks that she looks offended. Bunny understands that these events are held to provide regular donations to the almshouse, and it looks like they have compassion in their hearts. The woman in the yellow dress asks if the girl is okay, and says that it is a little late, but if she works hard, she will soon catch up with the other children. Hearing this, Bunny thinks that they did not think that this is already the result of her training. The lady in the lilac dress says that the blood of Cradell flows in this girl, and she will grow up to be a noble daughter, more elegant and worthy than anyone else. The lady informs that she is already a noblewoman at her age. Hearing this, the main character thanked her and grabbed her hands. But when the lady saw her hands, she doesn't understand why they are so hard and asks about it. She is interested in why this girl is wearing such an old dress. Seeing the surprised ladies, the Grand Duchess explains that because of her illness, the doctor told her to wash her hands and body frequently with strong medications to cure the infection. Fluvia talks about how if only her mother was a saint, and she is so sorry that she feels like her hands are so hard just because she is powerless. At this time, the main character looked at her and thought that she admired her acting skills. The Duchess approached the girl and said that her body had not yet fully recovered and asked why she ran here. The young lady explains that the room is too dull. Fluvia claims that there is still a long way to go to recover, and she was terribly ill and still so thin. The Grand Duchess gives the girl her cape and tells her that the northern winters are terrible and she shouldn't go outside in these pajamas, even if she really likes them. Hearing this, the lady in the yellow dress understood what was going on, and she suggests that the lady not worry. Fluvia strokes the girl's face and says that she will go to church every day and pray for her so that she gets better soon. The Grand Duchess also tells the girl that she should go back because they are in the greenhouse and cold air is coming in and she might get worse. Suddenly, the young lady screams and hugs the woman and says, "Mommy, don't cry." And at that moment, she thought that if she was going to leave, she wouldn't have come at all. Bunny says that if Mommy is sad, then Ophelia is too, and she suggests that she never be sad again. The girl reports that the doctor said that she was almost cured of malnutrition. The ladies were very surprised to hear this, and one of them noticed that there was a hole in the lady's skirt. The lady noticed that the petticoat of the Duchess's daughter was not of the best quality, and she did not understand what kind of material it was, because it was so old. The lady in the yellow dress thought that the Duchess and her sons were always dressed to the nines, and maybe the lady was given these rags because she was in poor health. The lady in the green dress thought that no matter how ill she was, they could see what condition she was in and why she had not been properly taught manners. At this time, Fluvia looked at the girl and thought that she was an uneducated brat. And then the Grand Duchess turns to the ladies and says that she couldn't really tell them what really happened, but while she was away from her family, her child was sick, and the maids who were entrusted with taking care of Ophelia. The main character heard this. She couldn't even imagine that she would reveal all the dirty secrets of the family. However, she of course keeps silent about the violence. Fluvia says that the fact that she continues to wear the petticoat is because it fills her with memories, and she realizes that she still feels guilty about it, because she didn't think that the maid she trusted would do something like that. Hearing this, the girl thought that if this were really the case, then there would be no need to talk. The Duchess wanted to evoke pity for herself and asks if there is a more terrible mother than her. However, the ladies calm her down and ask how it can be her fault since it was the servants' act who betrayed the young lady's trust. Fluvia agrees with them and states that if they have bad intentions, it is really scary. The woman in the yellow dress says that since the Duchess has lived most of her life in the temple, they probably thought that she knows little about everyday life. The Duchess says that she is afraid that Ophelia will not forgive her, and she is even afraid to think that she does not love her, because she is not her real mother. Hearing this, the ladies calm her down and say that she must be strong for the sake of her child. Viscount Leiden angrily asks the lady why she did it. However, the girl does not understand what he is talking about. The teacher explains what happened in the greenhouse this morning. Hearing this, the main character thought about what he found out, even in the first Angelus, and thought about how the Duchess had already scolded him. The young lady explains that she simply wanted to give flowers to her mother's friends. After all, she tried very hard to do what he taught her. Hearing this, the teacher asks when he said such a thing. The lady explains that she wore modest clothes, greeted her superiors first, and she doesn't understand what she did wrong. The Viscount screaming says that modest clothing does not mean things with holes. However, the girl claims that she wears these every day because these were her cleanest things. The teacher asks her if she has any clothes similar to the one she is wearing now. The lady replies that these are the clothes of the real Ophelia, and they are so luxurious and not at all modest. The young lady informs them that she will get into trouble if she goes out and gets them dirty. Hearing this, the teacher was very disappointed, and then he took the jar and pulled out one tablet and offered it to the girl, and said that it was for improving her memory and let her eat it. He explained that he found them especially for the lady. The Viscount claims that this medicine will help improve memory, and he found out about it and got it especially for the princess. Hearing this, the lady asks if it is true. Then she takes a pill and says that now she will become a genius. The teacher smiled and said that now he would see what she was capable of, and suggested trying to continue the meaning of this symbol. The Viscount reports that he never said anything like that to the princess, nor that she should dress modestly, nor that people of lower status should be the first to greet her. The teacher claims that he has always been the princess's faithful professor and said only the right things, but because of her absent-mindedness and stupidity, She did not even listen to the lessons and behaved inappropriately. The young lady asks if this is true, and he answers that it is. And then the girl agrees and says that he is right. And she thinks that her absent-mindedness and stupidity are to blame for everything. The teacher claims that he should have said something long ago, and he does not understand why he suffered and beat around the bush for so long. The Viscount claims that this time they will do everything properly. After all, she learned everything from him, but was too stupid to understand anything. He suggests that the girl listen carefully, and if Prince Angelus suddenly comes, she should say that she did not remember anything from their lesson. At this time, the lady thought that it was probably some kind of drug that clouded her mind, and she tried to act accordingly, and he showed his true face. The main character understands that even under threat of death, he would not leave any evidence. The servant asks if the master is okay. Angelus replies that he is okay. And at that moment, he thought that he had that dream again, and after what happened to Ophelia, every time he falls asleep, he has nightmares. The young gentleman asks if there is any medicine left for the headache. The butler asks if he should rest properly in his room, and he says that, in fact, the gentleman should not exhaust himself with this work, because the Grand Duke has not yet retired, and he is only learning. Suddenly, the Viscount enters the young gentleman's room and apologizes for disturbing him, explaining that the matter is urgent. He says that a few days ago at a meeting of the White Lily Society, which was held by the wife of the Grand Duke, the princess suddenly burst in, and the members of the society are interested in what she said. The teacher reports that they witnessed her inappropriate words and actions. The young gentleman asks what the probability is that this is a false accusation. The Viscount explains that there are many witnesses. Hearing this, Angelus cries out, asking why he is only telling him about this now, and wondering if the meeting wasn't a week ago. The man explains that the Grand Duke's wife has forbidden this from being publicized, as the incident could tarnish Credel's reputation and harm the princess herself. The young master thought that she could not be trusted, and it was all his fault, because this girl was an unbridled colt from head to toe. He thought that she could only be controlled by surveillance management, constant checks, and pressure. And after these words, Angelus drank the medicine and said that if even the slightest stain appeared on Ophelia's reputation, he would send her to the tower. A young gentleman enters the girl's room and says that he knows that she is smarter and more intelligent than any child, and asks what she was thinking when she did this. And at that moment, he thought that this girl was not Ophelia, but was terribly similar to her. Angelus claims that he does not want to listen to the reason, and suggests that she immediately go to the tower. And he informs that he will completely change her maids, and he will do everything so that she no longer thinks about such crazy things. Hearing this, the main character says that everything is correct, and she is to blame for everything. And this is all because she is stupid and absent-minded and cannot properly listen to the lesson. But the teacher explained everything perfectly, and due to her poor memory, she did not understand anything at all. Suddenly, the girl screams and says that she will become an obedient child and obediently take the medicine that Viscount Leiden gave her. However, the young gentleman does not understand what she is talking about and asks her about it. But suddenly, the main character throws the box, and it opens, and the tablets fall out. Seeing this, Angelus asks what it is. The young lady says that if she does not accept this, she suddenly faints. At this time, Bunny thought that he was caught, and Fluvia's methods were really effective, and she could pretend to be weak too. After all, the Credels are taught to be lenient towards their weaknesses. The main character thought that it was good that Angelus had no immunity to the feeling of pity, and that he was a hypocrite. The young gentleman takes the girl in his arms and screaming orders the doctor to be called, and says that the princess has fallen. Hearing this, the doctor tells the young master to lay her down on the floor, and he will examine her now. And at that moment, the girl thought that the doctor might guess. And then the main character opened her eyes and looked at the young gentleman and wondered why he was so pale. Angelus says that she woke up. The lady asks the boy if he was asleep. Hearing this, the young gentleman asks in surprise how she can say such a thing. At this time, the main character thought that she thought he was taking it too seriously and was very worried. The girl asks why she is here and what kind of place this is. Angelus explains that this is the medical room and says that she fell after hearing his words and asks if she remembers. Hearing this, the lady thought that she had not fallen because of this, because she had been preparing to faint for a whole week, and she understood why he felt relieved when she woke up and apparently considered himself guilty. The doctor reports that she came to her senses quickly, and that's good. The man turns to the gentleman and says that he should have called him immediately. After all, he was so surprised when the princess was brought here, and the girl thought about how she had been quiet lately, and that had had its effect. She looked at the guy and thought about how he didn't care what the maid had done to her, but that it was important to make amends. At this point, the main character thought that it could even be said that his disgust for Bunny had become less. And that would be great if that was really the case. The lady understands that it turns out that he will definitely hear everything she says. The doctor reports that she has almost recovered from exhaustion, but then unnoticed she fainted. And this surprises him, and maybe she has been feeling bad lately and asks her about it. The young lady reports that, to be honest, she often felt dizzy and there was something wrong with her body. Angelus heard this and asked what exactly was wrong. The girl reports that when she opens her eyes in an unfamiliar place, she feels like she is not herself, and all her memories are so confused, and that is why she behaves strangely. The lady says that she actually has one guess and asks if he will get angry if he says it. The young gentleman takes the girl by the hand and asserts that he will not, and suggests that she speak quickly. The young lady reports that if she does not take the pills that Viscount Leiden gives her, she feels better. The girl reports that he said it was a medicine to improve memory, and she drank it every day, and at that time, she thought that she actually did not do this. The main character understands that if she succeeds, everyone will think that she behaved strangely for 2 years because of the pills and often forgot something and made mistakes. The young lady claims that she was told that if she took this medicine, she would feel better, and so she continued to take them. The lady explains that, even so, they did not bring much benefit. But when she secretly did not take the pills, her head seemed to clear. The girl wonders if the Duke could talk to the Viscount so that she no longer takes medication. Hearing this, the young gentleman is surprised and says that there are no pills that improve memory, and he thinks that this is a medicine made with gold magic. The doctor explains that this is a hypnotic drug that washes the victim's brain, and after taking it, it is impossible to think rationally. And if you hear the same thing all the time, then you can believe what is said or do as he is told. And even if it completely contradicts the victim's usual worldview, the doctor reports that she complied with even the most unreasonable demands, and when she comes to her senses, she will feel guilty for what she did. The doctor says that usually this drug is not addictive, but if you take it for several years, because her own thoughts are mixed with those that are suggested to her, her mentality, her condition collapses. The doctor says that a person can go crazy from these drugs, and in severe cases can even die. The main character realizes that the situation has gotten out of control. Since Credile's anger is due to the fact that it is related to gold magic, everyone from the lowest working people to the servants are under investigation. The girl recalls that it would become known where the book came from, with golden magic allowing to change people's destinies. That is, if Viscount Leiden is caught dry from water, he will not get out. The main character ponders the fact that perhaps Viscount Leiden sensed something was wrong, or that the news quickly reached him, and he mentally disappeared. However, the lady understands that even in such a case, it would be difficult to avoid the Credels, and she did not think that this matter would have unexpected side effects. The lady looked at the young gentleman and said that if he continued to do this, he would fly away into the corridor from which he came. He doesn't understand what's going on, and the girl tells him to stop shaking his leg because it's inappropriate. The young gentleman claims that she speaks like an old woman, and at that time, he thought about how it was possible to hit him like that. He looked at the lady and thought that, for that, she first needs to grow up. The young lady asks him to stop worrying about what she is doing. The boy asks her if she thinks he is doing it because he wants to, and says that if there are other people in the area who use such drugs on children, she could become their victim. Bunny explains that she has guards assigned to her. However, the young master claims that he is much stronger than them. The servant informs the princess that the first duke has arrived to see her. Silver says that he will take her. However, the lady dissuades him that if he sits with his legs crossed, and the guy hears this and asks if he will fly away somewhere again. The lady answers that he will have a pelvic curvature. Walking down the corridor, the young lady asks the butler where he is taking her. He explains that the first duke and the invited physician are waiting for her in another medical room. Suddenly, the main character dropped the artifact and bent down to pick it up. At that moment, the servant covered her mouth with his hand and grabbed it. At this time, the girl was very scared because she did not know where they were taking her. But suddenly, in an unfamiliar room, she saw the Viscount, who said that apparently everything went well. The teacher holds some kind of mixture in his hand and says that if he gives it to the girl, then everything will come to an end. The main character looked at the bottle with the green liquid, and the man asks if she is interested in what it is. The Viscount reports that it is poison, and only he knows where the antidote is. The teacher asks how he thinks what will happen next, and he says that if he tells about it, then the Credeli will run after him like dogs. And he wonders if the bearer of the curse will die. What will happen to the real one, and asks her about it. The young lady tells him that he is crazy. Hearing this, the man screaming says that she irritates him, and he asks why he thinks he does this. The lady claims that he is the cause, and it is all because of him. She explains that at first glance, Viscount Leiden has the makings of a successful man. He had the drive to overcome the status he was born with, and he seemed to know the future and did not miss the moment when great fortune came. However, this did not last long. A perverted morality that bends to suit its own goals, a cruel and cunning nature, impatience, a violent character. All this together can make a person act impulsively and waste all efforts in vain. The girl understands that rising to a high position thanks to her abilities is luck, but she can also suddenly fall into the abyss. The main character realizes that she knew it would happen this way, and that's why she danced to his tune for as long as he wanted. And this is what happened. Bonnie says that he is like this because he does not know how to be a human being and behaves like an animal. The Viscount heard this and screamed and said that he would finish her off right now. But suddenly, the girl felt someone put a hand on her shoulder, and the young gentleman said that not so fast. Silver closes the girl's eyes and tells her that she doesn't need to see this. The Viscount asks in surprise how they got in here. And at that moment, the main character thought that he thinks that she just trusted him and followed these two. The lady remembers the artifact given to her by Angelus. After all, he told her then that a summoning spell was cast on it, and therefore, if you break one stone, it will track down the second ones. Angelus puts his sword to the Viscount and tells him to tell who is behind him, and he asks how the teacher knew about all this. The young master thought about why he hadn't asked about the source of the golden spirit before, and he didn't understand why he thought she got it from the dump. The guy understands that she is a little child who just wanted to be loved. Angelus grabs the teacher by the neck and orders him to tell the truth. The young gentleman gives him poison to drink, and then the Viscount pulls out the antidote, and the young gentleman knocks it out of his hands. Angelus tells the teacher to speak, or he will not have a second chance to explain himself. The young master asks again who is behind him, and at that moment, he thinks that his skill proves that he is not acting alone. After all, there is a person with enough power to spur on Silver's servant and bodyguard. Angelus looked at the bodyguards and thought that they didn't know anything, and that's why they ended up in the wrong hands. However, the guy understands that he needs to find out somehow. Suddenly, the Viscount says that he did it all on his own. Hearing this, Angelus remembered the incident with the maid who honestly told Silver who was the initiator, and she was kicked out. However, this time, it will not work out that way, because he considers himself different. The young master understands that the situation is very serious, and he does not know why the teacher is silent. After all, the fact that he bullied Bunny and wanted to take her hostage means that not everything is lost for him, and he will find out who is supporting him at any cost. At this time, the Viscount thought that if he could somehow survive. But however he claims that he did it all himself, Angelus reveals that he dug his own grave and then takes his sword and finishes him off. And after that, the young gentleman says that he will not have a second chance. Silver closed the girl's eyes and asked if she was okay. The lady replied that it was enough. And at that time, the main character thought that if she wanted to survive in this world, she would have to get used to such things, and she was glad that she had memories of Bunny. The young lady looked at the body and thought that perhaps she had seen something like this in the slums more than once. Lady wonders if they kill them all, who will find out who is behind it, and asks about it. Hearing this, Silver asks why she thinks they killed them all. The young gentleman explains that they left too. seeing the guard girl ask what happened to them. And at this time, Angelus realizes that they had pills in their mouths. Seeing this, the young gentleman says that he made the same mistake. Angelus reflects on the fact that he should have left the Viscount, and he realizes that his anger has blown his head off, and it's as if his blood has boiled in his veins. The young master thought that the reason he reacted so emotionally was because of the girl he was supposed to protect. Angelus turns to the girl and explains that he cannot undo what has already happened, but assures her that they will do anything to find out who is behind this. The main character looked at him and thought he was an idiot. Then she smiled and thanked him. At this time, the young lady thought that her eldest son, imbued with the heroic ideology of the Credels, did not even suspect Fluvia. However, the main character understands that simply stopping hating Bunny is also a huge achievement. Suddenly, Angelus kneels in front of the girl and says that he is serious. The young master says that the artifact will serve as proof, and he will soon give her a new one, and she can break it at any time, even at the slightest danger, and he will immediately come. Angelus claims that he will give them to her until she can live a peaceful life in this castle, and he explains everything that's what they are for. Silver looks at the girl and asks if she understood, and his brother is reminded that he said that he would not forgive anyone who touches Ophelia's things. Hearing this, Bunny thought that he was not accusing her of stealing, and this was the first time she had received jewelry as a gift. However, the main character does not understand what will happen when the real culprit is caught. The girl ponders, what if you say that the culprit will be Fluvia, whom Angelus trusts so much? And she ponders, what if you say that he is no different from the criminal who ruined Bunny's life? The main character thought about what she wanted to see. What kind of expression would they have when they heard this? Late that night, Bunny picked up the earring and thought about how she hadn't spoken to Damien since his birthday, and she remembered that he was definitely sick. The girl wonders if he has found any cure, and she would like to ask if he is being treated. And since then, there has been silence for quite some time. The main character realizes that the predictions are based on 8 hieroglyphs. Damien, and you are his case, 4 of the 8 symbols of the earth. And in other words, he needs to bury a lot in the ground. And this is the pain of suffering and even resentment, because the black-haired guy has gone through many hardships and has a high chance of becoming a great authority in the future. The problem is that the guys are always kicking him, but he still has a lot of work to do. Until Damien's destiny is revealed, and he dawns, he will have to overcome many hardships and difficulties. The guys turn to Damien and say that he is an impudent person and ask if he knows how many people are freezing to death here. And the second guy claims that it is all because of him. But suddenly, they heard a woman's voice asking where her baby was, and then they quickly left. The woman runs up to the boy and says that she is glad because she finally found him. The boy looks at her and thinks that she came. The man informs her that since she found him, they should now go inside because the wind outside is cold. At this time, Damien thought that the reason why he, the instigator of the war, and his mentally ill mother were still alive was because they were also protected by this man who came from time to time. This man also had the same black hair and eyes as him and his mother. The boy looked at the man and at first thought that it would be nice if this man became his father, but he understood it all from his look. Damien realizes that he hates him as much as everyone else. The boy realizes that his real father also abandoned them, and he does not need a replacement. The guy thought that he didn't want anyone to find his artifact, and he remembered that he hadn't contacted her for a long time. The boy looked at the sky and wondered how Bunny was doing. At this time, the main character looks at the earring and thinks that she has hope that this year will go well. In Damien's prediction, Ilgi and Vilgi collide with each other, and when they collide, the unknowns become even stronger. This is a sign of losing parents at a young age, and perhaps this year his mother will have an accident. And if a mistake is made, it can affect Damien too, because a child cannot help but be greatly influenced by the environment around him. The main character understands that in her world, it wouldn't have much meaning, but this place is different, and she doesn't understand how a tiger can appear in a dump. After all, even her grandmother would say that it is not justified. The girl looks at the artifact again and thinks that everything will be fine. And then she thinks that it would have been better if she hadn't gotten involved in this, because she got too carried away. Bunny reflects that she just wants to make sure this guy's okay. After all, she needs to tell him to stay in a safe place, because something dangerous could happen. The main character understands that she cannot leave this place yet because of the Duke. After all, she needs him to lower his guard, and therefore she will soon be able to move freely. Bunny understands that she needs to survive this year safely, and the boy needs to live too. The next day, Angela states that from now on, he will take charge of her education. Hearing this, the main character thought that she would now have to see his face every day, and she says that she cannot do this, and nothing terrible will happen. The girl looks at the young gentleman and assures him that he does not want to take up his precious time. Hearing this, the guy explains that he has already allocated time in his schedule, and at this time the lady thought about what if she does not want. The young gentleman asks the girl how far she has come, and at that moment the lady thinks that he really plans to teach, and she wonders if he feels responsible for what happened to the Viscount. And at that moment, the main character thought that, just come, what may. The guy asks how many letters she knows from the main book, and he says that they can talk about the international situation as well as about the culprit of the war. Hearing this, the main character does not understand why he teaches her this, and she reflects on the fact that he cannot help but know that an innocent child has become a scapegoat. Angela says that nothing in the world is accidental. Everything has two sides like a coin, and he claims that the girl must see the essence of things. Bunny thought that he was also talking about his essence. And at this time, she does not understand why Damien became the culprit of the war. And was it really impossible to tell the truth? The girl says that she heard about the Day of Trust. The young gentleman says that everyone has heard of it because the story was spread everywhere. And he says that the cause of the war does exist. However, it is not the child born that day, but his mother. The young lady asks how an ordinary person could start a war. After all, it was precisely because of the magicians and witches that it continued. Hearing this, the guy smiled and said that he was ordinary. Angelus explains that the royal family of mages are not ordinary people at all. Kazen Kingdom of the Evil Clan, where everyone has black hair and black eyes. Juana, Princess of the Fallen Country, and the culprit of the war. Hearing this, the main character remembered that if you think about it like that, the leader of the Dark Brigade said that he stole that artifact from the palace, but he didn't say which one. The girl ponders that it could have been the thing of an aristocrat who visited the palace, and that's when she realized that these were the princess's earrings, and Damien was her son, and the woman we call crazy was actually a princess. The young master reports that the Kazen Kingdom joined the mages even before the Great War. Angela says that Princess Juana received the king's order to divide the continent and approached the crown prince of the kingdom of Abyss. Bunny thought that the crown prince was Emperor Ryan I, who united the north. The girl understands that Damien is a prince because it is so obvious. The young master reports that the Kazen Kingdom suffered a complete defeat in the Great War and disintegrated without a trace, and all the members of the royal family were beheaded. Hearing this, the girl asks if Princess Juana survived. And at that time, the main character thought that if you count Damien's age, then she got pregnant after the peace came, and the guy says that His Majesty saved her. Bunny asks why he did it. Angelus explains that they say he truly loved her. When she heard this, the girl thought it was nonsense, because the woman he truly loved even had a child and was living a miserable life in the slums, and even her son was called the culprit of the war. The lady says that since he knows about it, then everyone in the imperial family knows and asks if it is true. The guy answers that she is right and reports that only the imperial palace, Credel, and the temple know. However, Bunny does not understand why they call the prince the culprit of the war and asks about it. Angela says she shouldn't think about it, and she shouldn't even talk about what she can handle. She should just take it as a lesson. The guy explains that she needs to understand this if she doesn't want to face a sad future. At this time, the girl thought that this meant that the imperial palace would take action before this story reached the people's mouths. After all, the imperial palace would have its hands on it. The lady understands that this does not mean that they will take care of Damien as the crown prince, and there is a high probability that they will silently get rid of him. The young gentleman reports that the emperor took Princess Juana into custody in the name of her protection, but perhaps the emperor changed his mind and rescued her himself. And it is also said that the guards were deceived by the princess's cunning. Angelus reports that there is also a version that the remaining inhabitants of the Kazen Kingdom broke out and kidnapped her, and he asks who she thinks let the princess out of there. Bunny replies that he doesn't know, but he thinks it was the one who wanted the princess and her unborn child dead. Uslishavedet. Upon hearing this, the prince asks why. The girl explains that on the day of the child's birth, the day of the prophecy came, and wishing for the death of the mother and child, he made this prophecy public. This man said that the cursed child with black hair and eyes is the culprit of the war, and he does not understand how he can live peacefully on the territory of the empire. Bonnie says that perhaps the kidnapper of Princess Juana is Her Majesty the Empress, since she is very cunning and was interested in this. The royal family of Abis is the only one where polygamy and polyandry are allowed. After all, the power hidden in their blood is given by God, and therefore even the temple turned a blind eye to such unions working to preserve the lineage, and the current emperor of Abyssus took advantage of this when uniting the north. After all, he entered into marriage unions with significant persons of various places. The main character says that the situation with power will inevitably be unstable for the first time after the country is founded. And even if she is the only empress in such a situation, one should be wary and pay attention to the rulers of other regions. Princess Juana became an eyesore. After all, a child born in the imperial palace should become a prince with the right of succession. However, no matter how closely the blood ties connected the ruined empire, if the emperor did not carefully extend his hand to the woman with his child, the rest of the emperor's wives would sense danger and turn away from the empire. The girl reports that the abduction of the pregnant Princess Juana from the palace of the prophecy of the birth of a child who will cause a war, and in the end, only the one who has the power is capable of this. And if you think about it, Angelus, looking at the girl and thinking that she was a very smart child, and he didn't know it all and never even really thought about it, the young gentleman realizes that if she had a real professor, she would enjoy studying as much as any other young lady. The guy thought that he had made a mistake, and he says that, of course, they whispered about it, but now everyone thinks that Her Majesty the Empress had an influence on it. Angelus reports that, speaking of the current situation with the inheritance rights, 2 influential families have already joined the side of the crown prince, and the Criddle family remains neutral as it symbolizes moderation. Hearing this, the main character thought that if this were the case, the empress might be involved. In the past, children were used to control the wives of emperors or other princes, so they had no reason to worry about a child who would probably die after being declared the cause of war. However, Bunny does not understand that now that the position of the crown prince has been strengthened, and whether it is possible to ignore the factor threatening the right of succession to the throne. The girl ponders what it must be like for the one who sent away the culprit of the war to never receive news of his death, and she understands that the empress will take care of everything personally. The main character thought about how to get out of the empire. She needs help from someone equal in strength, and if she hurries to rely on the side of strength, she can find herself in a more deplorable situation and become a toy in someone else's hands, which she will gladly use. Bunny understands that if he does not become an emperor, he will be a beggar, and he is also called the quadruple arsenal because he contains 4 signs. The girl understands that with the signs of fire and water, iron and wood, mountains, gold and silver will grow endlessly. Possessing intelligence and talent, as well as leadership qualities, he should be a natural ruler with a large number of followers. Bunny reflects on the fact that he is truly a wonderful emperor. After all, he is a hidden prince, a child of noble blood, who does not yet possess any power and is untouched by anyone. The girl knows that he is also the only one by his destiny who possesses qualities worthy of an emperor, and she assumes that he can, and this was the real reason for her concern. The main character is still worried, but she understands that Damien is the one she needs, and if she misses him, she will not have another chance. Bunny thinks about how she needs to hold on to him no matter what it takes, because this guy definitely needs to be saved. The young lady tells the maid to call her a suitable designer from the proper wardrobe, and the lady explains that it's about a dressing room that doesn't need to be booked, and about a designer that you can contact in person right away. And in a nutshell, she says that it's an unpopular place where the owners have nothing to do. The maid says that she understands her. Bunny says she doesn't need to give the name because she wants to get it over with. And as she does, she reflects on how she never thought the money Angelus gave her as compensation would be spent like this. The maid asks the lady if she would like to try it on herself, The girl claims that the quality of the fabric is not important. After all, she wants to cover the dress with small diamonds so that the fabric is not visible. The main character understands that she should avoid famous gemstones that can identify the craftsman. Hey, if accessories with big names are sold without permission, then they can be used to track the location. But a small, modest dress with unknown stones will do just fine. At this time, the girl thought that this is the price of wealth. And she tells the maid to tell the designer that if she looks closely at the dress, it should shine like a scattering of stars in the night sky. Bunny looked at her maid and thought that she was very good at understanding people. And even when she asked her strange things, she didn't ask the reason, and that meant she definitely trusted her. The girl says that she is going to get into trouble. Candace is surprised to hear this. And the young lady says that she first asks her to understand. When Ruby came to the young lady's room, the lady said that she had heard rumors that a wandering wizard had declared himself in the territory of the Grand Duchy, and she asked if Ruby knew anything about it. The red-haired maid says that wizards usually use their abilities to join royal or other noble families and merchant guilds, and wandering wizards traveling without any specific purpose. The maid asks the young mistress if she is also interested in the wandering wizards. At this time, the lady thought that she, more precisely, needs an artifact created by that wizard. The main character understands that no matter how quickly she wants to escape, it will be difficult to do so without the help of magic. And she understands that she needs to be able to use the move attack and extraction magic. The lady ponders that using an artifact created by the Creedle family's mage would be like running away with a tracking beacon. The red-haired maid explains that the magician has hair the color of roses and eyes like barrels, and his aura is Russian, even from a distance of 100 meters. The maid says that he also won a fight with a bear. However, the main character suggests that she tell him about his magical abilities. Reuben says she doesn't know because he's probably not as good as the wizards of the great families. And at that moment, the girl thought that the wandering wizards here are like the boards, and they also sing songs and tell all sorts of rumors. The main character understands that she has nothing to do, and she has no time to look for other wizards. Wandering wizards are always traveling, and if not now, it is unknown when she will have another opportunity to meet them. The young lady asks the maid where exactly he is, and maybe she can find out. At this time, the boy who lived in the dump saw his uncle who was wounded. Damien asks him what happened, and he saw a lot of blood. The man says that Mrs. Juana is the one who offers the boy to escape, and he says that the last hope of the Cazanos has been caught. The man asks the boy to protect Mrs. Juana, and then falls into eternal sleep. At this time, the boy thought that he needed to run after his mother. However, he did not understand where he should run. At this time, the main character heard that a young gentleman would curl her, and the girl thought that the Creedles were so nasty, and it was clear why they were not popular. The young lady asks Angelus if he was looking for her. The guy says yes, and offers her to take the new artifact. Seeing him, the main character thanked him. And at that time, the young gentleman thought that this girl was very similar to Ophelia, and it was so much so that even family members thought so. The young master thought that it was his fault that this child was forced to smile. However, he realized that simply protecting her would be enough. Angelus looked at the artifact and thought about how Ophelia found it after that, and he doesn't understand what happened to her. And he thinks that if she had something like that earlier, the danger could have been avoided. The young gentleman understands that everything is different now, and no matter what happens, he will not allow this girl to become like Ophelia. At this time, the main character thought that she could wear this bracelet now. And it is a good artifact, and if necessary, they will be able to track her location immediately. The lady understands that this is the first thing she needs to avoid. The next day, the girl went out into the city and thought that it was great, because now it was the beginning of the working day, and she was near the building of the Ministry of Magic of Creedle. Suddenly, the main character saw the man and thought that his upper lip was plump, and he probably got a lot of recognition, and also a short philtrum and wide eyebrows, and therefore he is not a meticulous person. And on the contrary, he has excellent tolerance and good interpersonal relationships with people. The girl thought that this man was stable and trustworthy, but it would also be easy to deceive him, and she understands that if she enters the building herself, she will be recorded, and so she calls him to her. The man asks the girl what she is doing here. The lady asks if there is magic that can instantly transport you to Diamond's land. The magician replies that they are always ready to move to any territory where they have a contract. The lady offers to use it. Hearing this, the man screaming explains that it is impossible to do this outside the castle. However, the girl assures him that they will do it for a very short time. The young lady assures him that if he helps her with this, she will definitely pay him by buying him something special. However, the man assures him that if the first gentleman finds out about this, he will die. The magician explains that he still remembers what happened 3 years ago, and says that he can't say it. The main character realizes that because the knights and mages cannot be replaced as servants, and if they mention Ophelia's curse or Bunny's existence, she will lose her life. The girl understands that 3 years ago, it was when Ophelia was cursed, and she only heard that Ophelia fell for the magician's trick. And she wonders if Angelus is involved in this. The mage claims that it is dangerous outside the temple anyway, and the lady says that it doesn't matter, because he will be able to track the scroll of movement that he created, and therefore he should not worry. Bunny reports that, first of all, the young duke is a busy man who doesn't have a minute to rest, and she herself hasn't seen him for a long time, and he only comes on business. The girl explains that she is not a simpleton who knows nothing about the world she survived alone in a dump without parents. Hearing this, the magician reports that this is not the problem. Bunny says it's only for an hour. The man says if she doesn't get back in time, they'll come looking for her, and the girl says she knows about it. The magician asks the lady why she is looking at him like that, and at that moment, the main character thought that he really is easy to fool. The main character reflects on the fact that he stayed at that inn, and it will be easy to find him, after all rumors have reached even the Cradle Castle. Suddenly, the girl heard herself being asked if she was looking for a wizard. The man with pink hair tells her that she is in the right place, because he is the wandering mage Muto, who wanders the world for justice and peace. The lady looked at him and saw thick, wide eyebrows, straight down turned a nose without visible nostrils, and large, round eyes, thin, large lips. The magician asks the lady if she would like to hear a song or stories of his victories over villains. The man with pink hair says that she can ask him anything because she has come a long way to see him, and therefore he is obliged to live up to her expectations. At this time, the main character thought that he decided to flirt with her because she looks like a rich, noble lady, although she is dressed quite simply. The girl understands that he is clearly a generous and interested person, but not to the extent of betraying others. The young lady says that it is easy for him to start a conversation, and the magician asks what the little lady wants from him. The main character says that she wants 5 scrolls a move to and 10 different artifacts, and she is interested in what type and effect of magic it has, and how long will it take to make. The girl says that she also needs magic that allows her to change the color of her eyes and hair, and for it to work while moving, and asks if this is possible. Hearing this, the magician says that he is not going to do dangerous things. Hearing this, the girl claims that he said that he defeated the bear, and the man says that this is the same animal, and explains that the pursuit is so annoying. Bunny says that she will pay in advance. She hands him the stones, and says that she doesn't know how many there are because she didn't count them. The girl explains that she has 3 pockets full of these stones, which she can give to him. Hearing this, the magician says that he can entrust him with anything he wants. Bunny reflects on the fact that it ended up taking almost the entire day to prepare, and even though she said it wouldn't be long, and when she gets back to the castle, it won't be as easy to escape again. The main character thinks that the main thing now is to make sure that Damien is safe, and she worries that at least nothing happens to him. Suddenly, the girl heard that the boy was alive, and she says that it sounds sudden, but there are people who want to take his life. The lady says that this year is dangerous, and he needs to be careful, and the boy says that he knows it. The main character asks how he knows this, and the guy explains that he just wanted to live, and he also wanted to thank her. Damien says he found the rabbit constellation,